All right, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our redeemer, and it is in his name, which is his authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect the message. Aman. Aman. Welcome to everybody. Bakwatav. Shalom. Kwam Yashrel. Shalom Yashrel. Teda. A'anai Kofi. A'anai Kohalet Kofi. Barak Allah Atsham Yahava. Shalom Khe. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Jambo. Habari. Mimi ni Kofi. Nina Franco Kutana Nowewe. Ni hao, namaste, osayu, I see you, thank you, kamsa, kamsamida. We appreciate your presence on all these different platforms. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but by being a voice to the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We appreciate your presence today very much. Come on in. We thank you for being on. We once again give all praise and honor to the Most High. We give all praise and honor to him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. Check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we're thankful and grateful for everything that she's doing for the community. Her business is to make sure that the health of the diaspora is her business, and thank you for supporting that. The tincture of the month, tincture just natural medicine, and she has many of them, but the tincture of the month is anxiety release. So we're thankful and grateful for that, and for that anxiety release, and those who are going to be able to be partakers in that. We appreciate you and we honor that journey that you're on. Thank you guys for being on once again. I'm thankful to be with you guys one more again, and we're going to continue in our Code Breakers series. Today we're going to talk about the Children's Code. In the Code Breaker series today, we're going to talk about the Children's Code. So we're excited and grateful and thankful about that. So those who are ready to go with that, we appreciate you. We hope that you come with the right mindset and come with a mentality to be able to break this code. When you become a code breaker, you can become a curse breaker. And once again, we're grateful to the Most High for everything that he's doing with us concerning that. So let's go ahead and say our hellos real quick and get into this. How you doing, Sister Lynette? Thanks for being on. Shalom to you. Once again, everybody on the podcast, you'll be on with us later on Facebook. We appreciate you. Those who are on YouTube, those who are on TikTok, we thank you. We bless you, and we bless you. We ask the blessings be upon thee in the name of Yahweh. How you doing, Big Ock? How you doing, Keith? How you doing, Sister Beverly? How you doing, Sister Deborah, Joseph, Sister Monica, Samaya, Sunny Ray, Samaya, or even Lorray, right? When you switch over to the other platform, Cream _81 or Come, I'm not sure. I think I said hello to Big Roy, but just in case, what's up? Jonas, thanks for being part of the community. Brother Alton, Shiso Israel, Her 3802, Jacob, thanks for being part of the community. Oil Goat, how you doing? My friend, my brother, I'm not even sure if I'm gonna say this right. Is it Jawin or Jawin? Jaiwinn. Thanks for being on with us. Rhea, how you doing? All I Am, welcome. Susan Burks. If I missed your name, please charge it to my head and not to my heart. I'm trying to think Divine Empress. I didn't catch you on there, so thank you so much for being on with us. We appreciate you. And we honor your presence today. How you doing, Big Brother Thomas? So everybody who's on, we appreciate you. So we're back in this Code Breaker series. We're trying to learn how to break the code so we can break the curses, right? You got to be able to enter into the code. You got to be able to know what the code is. If you're going to deal with the computer, you got to deal with code. Before you start applying things and dealing with the applications, right? We got to deal with the code. And thank you. And thank you for everybody for any likes, any shares, gifts, those who might become people who become part of the community by hitting that, if you're on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, and even hit that notification tab. If you're on TikTok and you want to become part of the community, we appreciate you so very much for doing so. And we honor you guys, even for those who give your gifts, for your gifts, for your love, for your support, for your, your views, even for your, even those of you who do things behind the scenes, donations, even those who take classes with us, those who are on some of the extracurricular stuff that we're doing. We're just thankful and grateful to have all of you guys on with us, and we appreciate you. How you doing, Silver 6446 and Big Ock? Was it Slick Money Maine? Okay, how you doing? Thanks for being part of the community. Slappers, thanks for even sharing. And thank you again, everybody, for all those different things. Mac Main, I'm not sure if I said that correctly. Thank you as well. How you doing, Sheila Ross? So, alrighty, so let's go ahead and get into this. We're talking about breaking the code breaker series. I'm not even sure what this is. What is this? Probably the ninth part of the series. We have this on the playlist on our YouTube channel. We have this on our podcast for you, and we also have this on Facebook, so you can catch up on parts of these series that you need to be able to see what we're talking about. But yes, we are dealing with being code breakers so we can become curse breakers, and today we're dealing with the code of children, or the code for children, excuse me. Today we're talking about the code for children. How you doing, Anthony? Thanks for being on. We're talking about what? The code for children. We got to have the code for children on. If we don't recognize that our children have a code that they should live by as well, then we're going to be lost, and they'll be lost to us. And thanks for being on. My wife is on, the Honorable Mind. Thanks for being on, babe. Once again, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And once again, the tincture of the month is anxiety release. And if you'd like to be able to get connected with her and contact her, let us know. And once we get your information, we can make sure that you know where to send whatever you need to send to her, and to even, her business, because it's a business that works with SOC, but it's separate from SOC as far as, lawfully and legally, so to speak, financially. So we thank you guys for doing that. How you doing, Sister Shima? How you doing, Sister Tracy? I think I saw Minister Sonia come on. Thank you to everybody. How you doing, Ronnie Powell? Thanks for being part of the community. So we're excited and we're grateful. Was it Ms. G Body? How you doing? Thanks for being part of the community. So we're talking about the code for children. Let's get into the code for children. So where can we start in the code for children? Because first of all, as we talked about in the very first part of the series, sometimes people don't even think there's a necessity for code. Why do we need to know a code? Is there a code? Is this conspiracy theory? Are the teachings of Dr. Neely Fuller Jr., something that are just out there, but nobody should even know about them? How you doing, Ms. Pierce? Or is there a code? Is there, in fact, something that's coded? Is there coded behavior? Are there things that you should look out for? Is there even, dare I say, biblical code of the Torah or the Torah? Is there a code for our children? Should we have our children live up to a standard? Should we have a standard of speech to them? Should we have a standard of thought for them, of ideology for them? How you doing, Savannah Speak, Grand Rising? Is it important to have a code concerning our children? So I would ask you, when your children go to school, are they learning the code? Yeah, somebody said most definitely already, right? I would ask the question for those who say, no, not really necessary. We don't need to think about that. We don't really need to do that. We don't really need to honor that. We don't really need to, see what's going on. Hey, how you doing, Perfect Imperfection? Is that how you doing? Thanks for being on with us, right? We don't really need to worry about that. People are just kind of going off for no reason. But question, when your children are sent to school, do you think they're taught a code? How you doing, Sister Sharice? When your children are sent to school, do you think they are taught a code? Do you think they are indoctrinated with any kind of coding? Right? And the answer would be yes, right? Now the question is the code beneficial to your children that they're indoctrinated with? How you doing, Ivy the Cure? Yeah, they're definitely taught a code and they're indoctrinated. So is that indoctrination, is what they're being given, what they're being coded as far as who they're supposed to become? Is it something that you would want to be lawful or legal, or do you think it's even something that is blessing them in any way, shape, or form? Right? If we be honest about it, look at what's going on, right? You said standard for our children taught at home. Doubt if they get our code there. But once again, that's even problematic, right? If we have to send them to school, and by time they end up being taught more code by somebody who doesn't care that much about them than those who care about them, then we have a problem. You homeschooled all of them? I'm out. Yeah, we homeschooled too. Praise y'all for you for even having the mind to do that, because you got to put some stuff in them, right? How you doing, Tamaya? And I'm sorry to the person who made the comment. I missed your name. I don't even know. I'm gonna say this right. Is it Yarine or Yarene or Yarene times two? Not sure if I'm saying that right, but we thank you for being on. Right? They're taught the contrary. How you doing, Justin? Right? And they're not only taught the contrary, they're taught to depend on the contrary. They're taught to be in cognitive dissonance because they have to get a code at home Then they got to get a code at school. They have to get a code that we would call righteous, and then get a code that they might call right. Remember, there's a difference between being righteous and being right. Thanks for being on, Erica. Is it Shaquille Joseph? Thanks for being on. The Shaquille. Not sure, but thanks for being on. Thanks for being on. Is it I? I Beyond. Thanks for being on. My wife, hey, how you doing? She said, I think I prematurely. I don't know. I didn't catch it. And if it's somebody who's blocked, I can't really. It's hard for me to be able to. I don't know. Some people come back on and tell me to take them off once they've been blocked. So, I I might get a comment or something from them later on. Somebody had somebody else email me the other day and be like, I think you blocked somebody. They didn't mean to say blah, blah, blah. So, prayerfully it was, prayerfully it'll get handled the way it is. But see, once again, there's a difference between being righteous and being right. We have a whole chapter in a book that I was blessed to be able to come out with called 21 Days of Motivation. And in that book, there's a whole chapter or a day, right? Each chapter represents a day, 21 days trying to form a new habit. And in that day, when we talk about starting to challenge the righteous versus right thing, when we say that, a lot of people see the word righteous means right lawful standing, right? Or right legal standing, right lawful standing, right? So you got to recognize. You got to recognize when people say this is right lawful standing, right? That's righteousness. So this is kingdom law, marital law, natural law of attraction, law of first mention, universal law, common law of equity, admiralty law, maritime law, public law, private law, remedial law, procedural law, all these different things, right? Substantive law, right? There's a righteousness piece where this is the law and what it is that we should follow. And then there's somebody that just wants to be right. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people could care less about being righteous or being in right lawful standing. They just want to be right. Just make me right. They're arguing not because they need to be, righteous. They're arguing because they just want to be right. You see, so a lot of people are being taught to be right, not to be righteous. See, what is right in this culture that you've been captivated in the land of your captivity, that captivates your mind, what is right is to make sure that you never have a business, but you make sure somebody else has a business. I've said this before, I'll say it again. If you work harder this year than you did last year, then here's my promise to you, that your boss will go on a greater vacation this year than he did or she did last year. You hear what I'm saying? If you work harder this year, I promise you that your boss will go on a greater vacation this year than they did last year, right? And it's something kind of tongue in cheek, but it's not really, right? Like if you work harder this year for somebody else's business, somebody else to get land, somebody else to have equity, right? If you work harder this year than you did last year, I promise you that your bosses will be able to go on a better vacation this year than they did last year. That's what being right is. Go to school and learn how to be right. How you doing, Gary Brooks? Thanks for being part of the community. That's what being right is. I'll be right. That's what society says. I'll be right. Do what's right. Pay the taxes to do what's right. Make sure, but the people who make money, they don't pay taxes, and sovereigns don't pay taxes because they're telling you what's right. But see, they know law. They know right, lawful standing. We call that righteousness. Thank you for the love. Appreciate that. Right. So they know righteousness. Now, once again, today is the code for children. Have you ever thought about the fact that there should be a code for children that teaches them right, lawful standing, including equity? You said the bad code, your child is being taught homosexuality, that it's okay. And now you're fighting the county. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want to teach your child something and you don't want your child to be taught something, not just homosexuality, anything. If you want your child to be taught about righteousness, if you want your child to say hallelujah in school, they will get in trouble. If you want your child to pray in school, they might get in trouble, right? Some states it's actually lawful to carry a Bible around with you, but if your child wanted to carry a Bible around with you, they might get in trouble. If they wore a shirt talking about the Most High, people would look at them some kind of way, right? But they're trying their best to uphold what it is that you believe. How you doing, Tula Blossom? Thanks for being on. How you doing, Kahama? How you doing, Fierce? Thanks for being on part of the community today. So So we have to. So once again, there's a code that we have to have. There's a code for children, right? There's a code for children. There is a code for children, right? There's a code for children that's out there, and we got to see what's going on, right? We got to see that this system is set up. See, once again, that's why culture is important and environment is important. This word called precept, Precepт. We know the word precept, we know the word concept, but we don't know the word sept, and that's what ties those together. And thank you, was that Birdie Mac? I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Right? You said they're going to try to take Bibles out of home soon because they see Israel waking up. I mean, hey, they've been trying to do that every day on the low. They just don't officially call it that. But see, when your child watches everything except something biblical, then they've already taken the Bible out the home. If you take your child out the home and never give them a Bible, they've in essence already made the Bible in your home a moot point. Especially if you get tired and you don't have time to make sure that you at least crack open a Bible verse or a Bible study, or make sure that before they go to school, you can learn about this all day. But first things first, how about you wake up 5 minutes earlier so you can have 5 more minutes to be able to read the scripture for about 3 of those minutes, and then tell me what it means for about 2 of those minutes. Or maybe tell me what you think it means for about a minute or 30 seconds, and I can at least use a minute or a minute and a half to be able to discuss with you what it means. See, there's no environment. So going back to that word sept, and thank you for the love. Going back to that word sept, you said, bro, they gave you a Bible because it's a fairy tale. Okay. All right, whatever. You know, if you believe it's a fairy tale, so be it. Then this is just not for you. Right. But see, even in that, somebody won't listen long enough. But it's interesting enough, though. Do you celebrate Christmas? Oh, you already got muted. You already got muted. Well, I would ask the person, do you celebrate Christmas? Do you celebrate Easter? Do you celebrate George Washington's birthday, which is never on his actual birthday? Do you celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, which is a great man, but you never celebrate on his birthday? Do you actually celebrate King? Do you actually celebrate Washington or whatever? Do you celebrate Independence Day and say it was for all Americans? And the reality is that the definition of an American is a copper-colored person indigenous to the Americas by the same group of people that tell you to celebrate Independence Day. Do you tell people get over their past and stop looking back to their past because you can't move on from your past? But at the same time, do you tell people never forget? Do you tell people make America great again, even though we should not think about what America was because you said never hold on to the past? So even if I disagree with you that America was never truly great, at least America you're talking about, at the same time, if you're saying make America great again, aren't you holding on to the past? If you say never forget September 11th, aren't you holding on to the past? If you're talking about Pearl Harbor, was that December 6th, December 7th, a day that will live in infamy, right? That up until then, you didn't care what was going on in the world, but now somebody attacked you and now you have to be the saviors of the world. Isn't that the past? See, there's a code for children. The children go to schools where people like this with the wrong ideology and the wrong concept and precepts are teaching them. Did you catch that? People who go to school for this stuff and are seeing that these concepts and precepts, they don't realize. See, now watch this. Let me help you with something. See, let's get into some code. And thank you for the love again. Right? Thank you. Like let's get into this code because we're talking about today the code for children. They want your children. They want you, of course, but they got you from when you were a child. You're trying to come out the system now. You're trying to report. You were imported. So ideology was imported into you, and we need to export it out. We got to report the truth. Hmm. How you doing, Teron? You said, how can we sing Zion songs in a foreign land? I mean, I get you, right? It's very difficult, right? In the land of your captivity. At the same time, what is it in the Song of Degrees? So I can't remember which one, somewhere in between Psalm 120, 134. It might be Psalm 127, 126, somewhere in there. It also talks about when he turned again our captivity. We were like those who were dreaming, and we began to sing and be rejoiced in what he was doing for us as soon as he turned it. Now, he turned it. We still had to travel back, but he turned it. But once again, let's go into the precept, the sept, and the concepts. Let's go into precept, sept, and concept. Let's go into precept, sept, and concept. See, the word sept, C-E-P-T, it means an idea. An idea, not an ideal, ideal. That's a narrative that somebody builds. I'm sorry, that's something that somebody builds to support their narrative. See, so a lot of these theories support a narrative. Would you be surprised at the theory? Well, we'll get to that in a sec. Well, actually, no. Let's deal with that. See, that idea, accept, CEPT. You said, why is my hair looking like that? You respect what I'm doing? Well, if you respect what I do and you respect who I am, then you learn of who I am, and you would know that why this is because of a connection that I have with the Most High, what I've decided to do for Him. And if it doesn't meet up to your standard, then that's okay. I'm not here to honor your scepter, your idea. This is not for everybody. So, there's people who walk around with this and they're comfortable and confident in who they are. My wife likes this. The Most High likes this. And if you don't like it, you're not one of those two. So you just get in where you fall in, with all due respect. Like, really, with all due respect. But anyways, I'm on some BS. Okay, cool. No problem. Well, you do what you do and you have a great day. Because I can treat you like a human being even if you can't treat me like one. And see, that's the code for children. A lot of children are being raised by people who think it's okay to disrespect what they don't comprehend, or even disrespect that which they just don't like. If you don't like me, that's fine. The Bible doesn't even say you must like one another. It says you must love one another. There's days I don't like myself. I still got to love my wife. So my child has to see that code. You see, even in this right now, even in those who are spiritual children, even the children of Yastel, they need to be able to see a code. They need to be able to see us be code breakers so that we can become curse breakers. When people try to curse us, do you have a code that protects you? You can even be a child in an adult body, and we're all immature in certain areas, by the way. So that's fine. That's fine. How you doing, Minister Shante? Bakwata? Right? So you got precept modification of thought and behavior. So watch this. So that's a modern definition, but watch this. If accept is an idea, right? And how you doing, Mike? If accept is an idea, peep game. If accept is an idea, then what is a precept? A precept is the environment that the idea comes out of. You see that? So the environment, if it's been modified, and that's what their definition is. So if they're saying they modify things to make them precepts, then what they're saying is that they were modifying your environment. Oh, thank you. Truth is life. Yeah, it's better. I'm still, my voice isn't all the way there, but I think it's just because I've been talking a lot recently. So I usually would have at least like a Wednesday off and then have Sundays for family day. And I kind of been bending that a little bit to make sure we get back on track with some things. So next Wednesday, I'll finally have a day off, but I believe my voice will be able to be strong. I'll get some tea or something in me and keep pushing and moving. But hey, how you doing, Gerald? A grand rising to you. So yeah, so a precept environment, it should be sacred, it should be holy, it should be set apart, it should be sanctified. How you doing, Sister Mary? Praying for you as always, you and the family. So a precept is something that is an environment. If they are, by definition, in their definition, they say they modify your environment, they modify your precept. So your ideas come out of a modified precept. Now, if you were to eat modified food, what would you call that food? What would we, if we were to be our own thesaurus for a little bit, what are some words we could come up with in place of the word environment? And how you doing, Arcton? Thanks for being on. Right? So precept, if they were to modify your food, modified food, what would we call that? What's some other words we would have for that? Okay, you say McDonald's or McDonald's, but what's some other terms? You said you're trying to prove a point. I don't even see what you said so far, but are you willing to listen to a point? I guess. What is the point? I guess. Well, what is the point that you're willing to make? That's fine, right? But we would call it fake, right? GMO, genetically modified, GMO. So if you eat modified synthetic meat, synthetic rice, plastic rice. How you doing, Sister Ellen? Right? Thank you, babe. My wife even says modified, it means changed or fake. Oh, okay. Well, not you talking to someone else. Okay, well, before we start fighting and then it becomes something now between us and I don't even know what's going on, let's just be at peace. I see you have the name of, Yesus in your name. So, let's bring his peace. And let's peace be still on this stuff, right? Fake, right? So if it's fake, if it's genetically modified, then that means that if you eat from a modified precept or a modified environment, that means you're eating, your ideas are being fed out of what? A fake environment, genetically altered even, right? Not in its natural state. You know, the United States of America is the United States corporation by definition. 28 USC 3002 15A. 28 USC 3002 15A. 28 USC 3002 15A. 28 USC 3002 15A. Once again, 28 USC 3002 15A declares that the United States is a corporation. Now read B and C as well, and you'll be dumbfounded and realize that yes, this corporation is owned by somebody else, and you have to become a fake person to be owned in the corporation. The definition of capitalism is what? Capitalism is defined as when politics and economics are used to control trade and industry, that trade and industry is wielded by private corporations for profit and not the state. That's the definition of capitalism. And you are in a place where you want more capital because you are in a place where there's capitalism. You said you're asking about the Gentiles y'all claim was the outcast of the house of Yashnah. What are you asking? That's very, if you don't mind, maybe putting it together. What are you actually asking? Like, if you can make it more specific, if you don't mind, and then I can help out, because to say, well, I'm asking about the Gentiles. What about them? First of all, there's difference between Gentiles, pagans. So if you're talking about specific people called the Gentiles, not even the gens, are we talking about King Herod? Are we talking about those who started being in the Sanhedrin? Are we talking about those who were already changing the word at the time of Yashua, which is why Yashua, who you call Jesus, which is why Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 through 20, he says this, verse 17, make sure, I did not come to destroy the law or the prophets, but that it might be fulfilled. Verse 18, so we should not change one jot or tittle. That means the most minuscule of measurements, nor the way it's written. Verse 19, those who break the least of these commandments and teach others to do so are the least in the kingdom, but those that keep the commandments and teach others to do so are the greatest. And then he even has to say, verse 20, that you should know the law greater than the scribes and the Pharisees. That's him speaking at the Sermon on the Mount. He's speaking about that because later on in chapter 6, before he gets to the Lord's Prayer, he's going to talk about the hypocrites. Those, hyper means above, hypo means beneath. So those who are beneath, hypocrites, they are hypocritical because they live beneath the standards of the Most High. You said you're trying to prove that the Gentiles Paul taught were not Israel? Yeah, we have no problem with that here. Okay. If that was that the beef? If so, then we have no problem with that here. Yeah. So we don't teach that here. We don't teach that Gentiles have no access to the kingdom if they follow the law, but they have to get it, and they have to get it through Israel being sealed. That's even Revelation chapter 7. And even in Romans chapter 11, it talks about they have to be grafted in. Paul says, you guys are trying to say Israel can't, do we just get rid of Israel in their place? He says, Yah forbid, Elohim forbid, of course. And then Romans chapter 10, verse 1, he says, my prayer, even in Romans chapter 9, verse 6, he does say all Israel is not Israel. But in Romans chapter 10, verse 1, he says, my prayer is still, though, that Israel would be saved. Verse 2, Israel has a zeal for Elohim, but it's not according to knowledge anymore. So verse 3, he says, hey, we don't have therefore we got into everybody else's law, but we're not about the law of the prophets anymore. So verse 4, therefore the law doesn't really have effect for us. However, verse 5, if we still follow the same Elohim that Moses followed, we should be about the law. Verse 6 or 7, but we don't have no heaven or hell to put nobody in. Verse 8, though, we still need to get this thing together. Why? Because verse 9, we have to confess Yahshua HaMashiach Adon, Elohim, you could raise him from the dead. What does that literally mean? That literally means that confess, the word confession, even in the Greek homologia, means to have the same logic. So we don't have this logic of the Israelites who are supposed to obey the law, that we can't even talk about this thing. So now Romans chapter 10, verse 10, even when we get that together, we're still on our way to righteousness, right, lawful standing, and on our way to salvation, being salvaged. However, verses 13 through 16, it says what? It says that, so anyone who call anyone, therefore, once they get that, who calls upon the name, the Shem, the Sham, the authority of the Most High, they shall be saved. But how can one be saved if they don't believe? How can they believe it if we're not preaching it? How can they believe it if they can be saved, but how can they be saved if they don't believe it? How can they believe it if they haven't heard this? How can they hear it if we're not preaching it? How can they preach it if we're not sent by the Most High, right? And then verse 16, who shall believe our report? Him quoting Isaiah 43:1. So yeah, on here, we have no problem with that. We could even go to Romans chapter 8, verse 18. The suffering of this present time that we're going through as Israel is not worthy to be compared to the glory which shall be revealed. But verse 19, so the creation, others are waiting on the manifestation of the sons of Elohim. That would be us. So right? But anyways, so we have no problem with that. That's why we call him Yashua instead of Yesus or Yesu or Jesus or Jesus, because that means half man, half Zeus. So yeah, we're actually have no problem with that, what you were talking about, that the Gentiles that were being talked about were not the same as the Israelites, most definitely. Okay. So, but yeah, so once again, and that goes back to our sept. See, we got to, what is a sept? The CEPT. What is your idea? Where is it coming from? What is your sept? What is your idea? Where is it coming from? See, the precept is where your sept comes from. The precept is the environment that it comes out of, right? The sept is an idea. The precept is the environment comes out of. Is it even out of the right environment? See, we're talking about the code for children today. Let's get to the grind of that, because see, we're so busy trying to argue the stuff that once again we're not even arguing the fact that our children are being taught the wrong thing. Matter of fact, when you were a child, were you taught these precepts? Were you taught this environment that stuff that the sept has to come out of? You said the Greek scribes and Pharisees mess your head with your dead wisdom, find the living Elohim inside you. Well, the fact that you say God shows that you're talking Germanic. You're not even talking Greek or Latin. So get that together. If you were talking about the Greeks, I would be saying deus or deity. When I say Elohim, it already talks about the culture in which I speak from, number one. Number two, when you talk about the Greek scribes and Pharisees did it, that's why Yahshua, we literally just talked about them in Matthew chapter 5 and Matthew chapter 6 on the Sermon on the Mount. But once again, because people don't have ears to hear or don't even have hearts to be open, to be empathetic, you're in a different place, right? So, yeah, if that's your mindset, is that you've already come to use ad hominem against somebody and against the people, then of course you don't have an ear for this, and this is not for you. And as we would say, see, this is what we got to even get to our children, right? And thank you, Jason, and thank you, Minister Sonia, for saying that. Right? Even with our children, see, the code today, we're talking about the code for children. With our children, you got to recognize that they are under this attack. See, if adults are under this attack, and this adult will attack the other adult, if this adult will attack the other adult, then you got to recognize and you got to realize, if this adult will attack the other adult, then what are these adults that attack other adults doing to the children that they have or they teach or they come into contact with, even the spiritual children? You hear what I'm saying? We're arguing right now. People are arguing, you got to believe what I believe. You got to do this, right? You got to do that. Like, we're literally giving you scripture upon scripture upon scripture upon scripture that you say you believe in. Read your Bible, it'll bless you. I'm not even arguing, right? I'm trying to argue on behalf of the babies, but people are more concerned about themselves. See the precept, the environment that the sept comes out of? It's more important for me to fight you than it is to fight for the babies. Because we're trying to talk about the babies today and protecting this next generation, because that's generational wealth. You think that wealth is only riches, but wealth is going to be their ideas. Wealth is going to be their business ideas. Wealth is going to be how they view themselves. We're so busy fighting each other that we're not fighting for children that are being told that they're not male or female anymore. See, the code for children is extremely important. The code for children, extremely important. And we don't think about it. Your child is telling you your child is under attack, and they're not even in a position to argue yet. And you are not setting any precepts or environment, any laws that set an environment for you. You have none. You're arguing as a captive would. Yeah, it's time for the argument to stop. That's why the hearts of the fathers have to return to the children. The hearts of the children have to return to their fathers. We should be worried about returning to our fathers so that us as children can be taken care of, so our children can be taken care of, so our children's children can be taken care of. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 3 tells you about equity. And then Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6 and 7 says this: train up a child in the way that they should go, so when they grow old, they will not depart from it. And make sure that you train them in what? In wealth. Why? Train them to make sure that they are the lender, because the borrower will always be a servant to the lender. Proverbs chapter 13, is it? I'm getting myself mixed up now. The Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22, somewhere around there. You quote the last half: the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just. But the first half of it says that you got to take care of your children's children. You got to think generational wealth. Then the same thing that the wicked have, it becomes yours. Why? Because even the wicked have enough mindset to take care of their babies. at least financially. They might not take care of them morally, but they'll take care of them financially, and they'll teach them about more stuff. They know more stuff about your word than they do because they know it, to be intimate with it. You said train, they ain't soldiers. Do you send your child to school? Guess what? They're being trained. If you go to work, guess what? What do they call it when you get to work and somebody has to teach you how to do the job? You being trained. You said not by choice, okay, but you send them. And by the way, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty to the pulling down of strongholds. That would suggest to you that we're at war. We're at war for these babies, whether you like it or not. See, now you don't have to be the one to fight, but you're still a soldier. See, it's a different context, it's a different concept. Once again, the precept, the environment that we get the ideas out of, we're fighting by somebody else's narrative. Where are we getting the environment from for our ideas? We're thinking as prisoners of war. We're thinking as shadow slaves. We're thinking as people who don't even recognize that if you're in debt, you are a slave. If you're a slave, you are in debt. So who are you indebted to? Who are you paying your taxes to? Whoever you pay your taxes to, you're a slave to them by definition. Render Caesar's things to Caesar's, but Elohim's things come. If Caesar has laws that say you could be a non-citizen national and you don't have to pay taxes, why are you still paying them? You don't even know how Caesar's law works. If you were to render Caesar's things to Caesar's, you should be sovereign. How you doing, Miss D Live Life? Right? But these are terms that we don't even think about. We don't care about. We don't live by. Why? Because we care about being right and not being righteous. You said spare the rod is rod and word. No, I mean, you're talking about a shepherd. The shepherd had a rod and he had a staff. The staff is for direction. The rod is for correction. So the rod might have to be used for correction in different ways, even if it's just threatened with. So, but even in that, we don't whip the children. That's somebody else's culture. You never seen it in the Bible where it says whip. That's somebody else. Some of the same people that say, "Oh no, we're not at war. We're not this and that." You whip your children. You got to ask yourself, where's your mindset coming from? Once again, what is the precept? You busy arguing accept an idea, but not realizing what the precept is, the environment the idea comes out of. And once you get from the precept, the environment, to the sept, the idea, guess what comes next? The concept. The concept, con being one with what? Sept, the idea. So when you say you reach the con man or a con woman, all that you're saying is you have somebody who can make you become one with something they want you to do. That's it. So a concept is just somebody who makes you one with something, with an idea. A concept is becoming one with an idea. So if your precept, your environment is bad for your children, then your sept, your ideas are going to be bad for your children. Or if you're a child, if your environment you come out of, right? Like Malcolm X said, a poor home. If your child has a poor education, it's probably because they came from a poor neighborhood. If they came from a poor neighborhood, it's probably because they came from a poor home. If they came from a poor home, it's probably because they came from poor parents. If they had poor parents, it's probably because their poor parents have poor jobs. If their parents have poor jobs, it's probably because they came from have a poor education, and it's just a circle. It's a vicious circle. And by the way, for the person who didn't like the term train, it actually is, because when you look up what they meant and train up the child in the way that should go, because once again, our precepts, our environments are bad. We don't even know where they come from or what they're supposed to be or how they're supposed to be executed, right? We don't know our language. We don't know where they come from. So when it actually says train up a child in the way she could go, how you doing, creations? When it says train up a child in the way that they should go, right? What does it mean? It's actually saying pull them back like an arrow would be pulled. That's actually the context of it. When you do some study and some research, it's literally saying pull them back like an arrow should be pulled, and pull it back as much as you can. And see, when you're pulling an arrow, see, a lot of people have never pulled an arrow, so you don't realize the strain and the stress that one has to take, and the perfect body posture that they must have, and how they shouldn't move, and how they have to have aim, and if they do move, right? And some people do the one eye technique, but just like if you're shooting, right? A lot of times you're not supposed to use one eye, you're supposed to use both eyes, right? So you got one eye that's locking through there, but one eye that actually allows you to be able to see even more clearly. But they'll pull back. Sometimes even they have to point up to the heavens and come down to be able to make sure that they got their stuff stretched out and they're aiming at a target. Train the child, right? You're sitting. There's a lot of fatigue even that comes with archery. Exactly, right? So even with that, you're using everything you can to do this, right? There's some African tribes right now, even to where women can go hunting. They don't care if women can go hunting, but still, they're not going to make lesser versions of the weapon. So not as many go hunting, not because women can't hunt, but because there's a certain amount of strength. There's hundreds of pounds of stress on some of the arrows that they have, to where they're like, ugh. And they're like, okay, train them up, train them up, train them up. When they're saying train, they're literally talking about aiming, right? So when you release them, and they go towards the target, they'll go through the air. Now even the arrow, the child is made, the arrow is created in a specific manner, by the way, right? The arrow is made in a specific manner, right? Like the arrow, you can't have an arrow that doesn't bend. You know that the arrow has to be able to bend through some things, because it's going to come through some pressure. It's going to come off the wooden bow. It's going to go through some things. It's supposed to be able to bend but not break, right? You have to train them up for that. You have to aim them. You have to put them together before the arrows there. See, the women might not even go hunting in some of the African cultures, but they'll make the arrows. They're responsible for making the arrows. So the woman is even designed in what? In the creation, the formation of what's coming out of her womb. See, we don't even think about this. The arrow. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for even bringing this to my remembrance. Right, like you have our sisters over there when they're sitting there and they're making the weapons, and if they have to add poison to it, they're the ones that actually a lot of times will come up with the mix or whatever. Or actually, I'm sorry, the men will actually come up with the mix because they don't want the sisters to have to deal with the poison. Excuse me, but the sisters will make sure that everything's correct, even to make sure that the arrow can be dipped in it and stuff. And they'll be the ones to take the sinews when they're making the food and they're doing all this stuff. They're making the food and everything, and then when the men and some of the women that can go hunting because they can handle the arrows, when the women are making the food and the children are around watching this process, watching what's going on. See, the women, when they're making the arrows, and what's going on, they are literally taking pieces of the animals and putting them together on the wood that's been put together and prepared for this. So she's given this stuff, and out of the food, she's using every part of the food. Some of it's going to become for the house, some of it's going to be clothing, some of it's going to be food, some of it's even going to be weapons to be able to go get food again. And she's sitting there having her children watch this process that's going on. And so her children are literally watching the arrow go together. The arrow is going to be something that the children watch that's going to be aimed at a target. Everything working together, all things working together for what Elohim has designed it to work for. And Native Americans might say something that now people act like Americans made up, or certain people in America made up. Use every part of the buffalo. We're not just aiming an arrow; we're aiming a culture. The whole family is involved in every single shot. Hmm. The whole family is involved in every single shot. There's not one shot that's going to go out that not everybody in the family was involved with. So you better be, bruh, when you shoot that arrow, sis, when you release that child, you better make sure that everything that they were supposed to be trained in was true. Because if one part of the process is off, if one bit of feather, right, or leaf, or one part of bone that's been grinded to make sure that it's sharp enough to pierce, or stone that's on the edge of the stick, or if the stick itself is not able to bend correctly, if one thing is not correct, if there's a child that was playing around and played around too much to where all of a sudden they broke the arrows and therefore they can't go hunting for the next couple of weeks, that means everybody's going to be fasting. And it's not because the Most High said we're going to be fasting either. Right? Everybody's involved. If one brother has not been making sure that he put together the poison correctly and it's in the wrong place, the people shooting the arrows could die. If they haven't been practicing shooting for a long time and they're not going out, if they haven't been practicing running and being in shape, everything has to come together and work together on every shot. The community. Now, question: does your community build children like that today? Does every shot that these children take come from you guys working together, or is it like what we do now, like what we've been enduring right now? Yeah, sadly, no, right? Like, because the reality is, what happened even when we started, we got to argue over whose sept whose idea is better, but we don't even have a precept that says that all of our ideas should be coming from the Most High and should be beneficial to all. But you know why? And you know why? But you know, that's a great point. You said that there's not any there's not, comparatively speaking, there's not really any argument compared to what the argument was. You know, there's a lot more argument over the children than there is over the husband and wife. When we talked about the masculine code on Sunday, we talked about the feminine code on yesterday, and today there's argument about the children. You know why that is? Because we're out of order. The precept is wrong. Because once again, we believe that children come before parents. Mothers will tell you that their children come first, and fathers will tell you that their children come first, and that's out of order. Once again, a precept means the environment that the sept comes out of, the idea. The sept is the idea, CEPT. The precept is before the idea. So before the idea, what's the environment the idea comes out of? The concept is being one with the idea. And we don't even have the idea correct or the environment correct. The environment's supposed to be husband, wife before we start talking about children. But children don't see husband and wife. And even if they do, they see what? Modified versions, genetically modified, fake. You know, it is not lawful. It is not legal for somebody to modify something unless they own it, right? Or I'm sorry, unless they've changed it. I'm sorry. Let me say this again. I said that wrong. Rewind. You know, it's not legal to patent something unless somebody has modified it by law. It's on the books. It's on the books. Coffee with Kofi. I forgot about that. Right? It's on the books. Right? It's on the books that, like, if somebody patents something, like, I can't go out here and just be like, I'm gonna grab this leaf and I'm gonna say it belongs to me. Nobody's found it. Nobody's patented it yet. No, they can't do that. Why? Because the Most High made it. It's in law. It's literally lawful. You cannot patent something that the Most High made. So the only way to take ownership over something is that you got to modify it. And a lot of people taking ownership over this word because they haven't what? Because it's not real. It's modified. Right? It's modified. Well, that's true to a certain extent, but we got to ask ourselves, even like, for example, I'm with you to a certain extent, uh, you know, but let me ask you this, Lady King, if you don't mind. Um, what does the word, or watch this, what is the firmament? And it's just for Lady King. And I'm not trying to come against you. I just want to give you an example of what I'm talking about because you asked about the precept, right? So hopefully we're having, you know, dialogue now, right? That's what all I'm trying to do. So what is it when somebody says firmament? What does that mean? What is that? Not, and I'm talking about even biblically. Firmament means heaven. Well, it would be the thing that would, you know, or actually, yeah, it would be heaven, the thing that puts it up. But unfortunately, that's not actually the case, because, you know, firmament is actually a Greek god, or really a Greek deus, because they didn't use the word God. God is Germanic deities, right? So a deus or a deity. So firmament is the son of Gaia. Gaia was the Big Bang. Before Gaia, there was nothing. Then Gaia was the Big Bang, right? Then firmament is a Greek god. So somebody, when they started writing things in Greek, right, when Romans got their hands on it, and when you started seeing stuff more romanticized, Roman antics came upon it, right? And they started, you know, basically doing iconoclasm. They started changing words to be able to say, hey, we want this to fit our culture. So you would say firmament is heaven, not realizing that the reason that they say that is they change. It used to be the word hakwaya, right? So that word hakwaya, that's what is above us, or really hakwaya, but really hakwaya, and it's above us, right? So they said firmament. So this is how they go. Remember, so in the Bible, in the beginning, you know, I'm sorry, Barashat bara Alacham Atshamiyam Adat. So in the beginning, or in beginning, Alacham created the heaven and the earth. And after that, the earth is without form and void. It's a gas. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. It starts to slow down and cool, liquefy. And the spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. And Elohim said that let there be light. Now, it's not physical light. It's enlightenment, because physical light doesn't show up until Yom Dalet, or the fourth day, the fourth period of time. Day in Hebrew doesn't mean 24 hours necessarily. It means a period of time. So we don't know how long that period of time is, right? So it's not until the fourth period of time that the sun, the moon, the stars is going to come into place, right? So right now, we're just as gas, liquid, The Holy Spirit hovers upon the face of the waters, and Elohim says that let there be enlightenment upon it, upon the surface, right? And there is what? Enlightenment. And saw that he saw that the enlightenment was coming, but it's still just on the surface, and there's still confusion or darkness. So what does he do? He says, okay, I'm gonna separate the confusion from the enlightenment, the darkness from the light, right? In the evening, he called what? I'm sorry, in the night, in the darkness, confusion is called the evening, and the light is called what? The day. And that's why our days in Hebrew, in the Hebrew calendar, they actually start at sundown. Why? Because sundown is confusion, it's always darkness to light, as always. Um, the sun is down to we're waiting for the sun to come back up. And when the sun is on its way back down, then that's going to be the beginning of the next day. The evening and the morning was the first day. And then what? And then after that, he made the choir. I'm sorry, he had the waters that separated from each other and then put something that hardened on the top in the heavens, right? And so in the heavens, it hardens up top, right? So you have the choir that hardens up top. That's gas, liquid, solid up top, right? And then he said that's the heavens, right? And sometimes even you can say including the atmosphere, what we breathe in, literally even breathing in heaven to a certain extent, right? But then he had the lower seas. And then after that, on the third day, it hardens on the bottom too. And the earth comes up with herb yielding seed. Now we get to the fourth day where we deal with the sun. And now you got the seed, you got the chlorophyll, you got all the ingredients to be able to grow plants. So now you can have birds and you can have fish on the next day, et cetera, right? So all that being said, now go back to the Greeks. The Greeks who are learning from Phoenicians being Punic, being the people of Carthaginian, being the people who were Canaanite, being the people who were Israelite, being the people who were Kemet and Cush and all these things that people learn from. The Greeks, who will then inform the Romans on how they do stuff, they got their alphabet off the alphabet. They also got their creation story from us. So what do? They come in, they just plug in stuff. So they say there's this. So instead of, we just talked about what it was, gas, liquid, solid, the Most High, there was nothing, Yahweh spoke, right? And all of a sudden, all these things came into being. That's what a universe is, by the way, too. Universe is a the word uni means a or single, and verse means what? A spoken sentence. Put it together, that's a universe is a single spoken sentence, right? But in the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. That's the universe. So universal law has to be tied into him. Now, all that being said, what did the Greeks do? The Greeks say, hey, okay, we're going to take all, because remember, Greece was not a country, not in the beginning, right? So Greeks come together, especially with that Macedonian push, and Alexander the Great takes it, the leopard with the four heads, all that stuff, and he pushes all that stuff there. And so they put a narrative there to say, this is what we're going to say happened, and this is how we're going to take what creation was and make it our own, right? Modifying it, taking ownership over it. How do you modify it? They say, okay, well, in the beginning, there was nothing, but we had this deity, Gaia. She's pretty powerful. You know what? We'll say that she was the Big Bang. So in the beginning was nothing, and then Gaia just came into being. That's the Big Bang, right? And out of Gaia, they're going to say, well, what happened next? Oh yeah, the water is separated, and there had to be some enlightenment. Okay, so Gaia is going to give birth, immaculate conception, just like Mariam gave birth to Yasfa. They're going to say she's going to give birth to or Gaia is going to give birth immaculate, but we're going to do it better. She's going to give birth to two sons. She's going to give birth to a son called Firmament. She's going to give birth to a son called Neptune. Neptune is on the lower seas. He's over the waters there. Firmament is over the upper seas, right? So they've literally taken what it was and they put their stuff in there. Then on top of that, they said, okay, not only we're going to do that, now we're going to say that Gaia and one of her sons, Neptune, the upper son, we're going to say that they came together and they had babies that came upon the earth that's going to come out of what Neptune was putting together. And they call them what? Titans. And eventually they're going to become the Neptures, the deities, and what people later call gods, leading up to people like Zeus, coming from Kronos and all this other stuff that's there, right? So when you're talking about the stuff and you say firmament, I said all that to say this. Once again, see the environment that you're coming out of. See, Greco-Romans are very off on their teachings. And they're taking something and trying to modify it to make it their own. And people are still living by a modified thing to the point to where they're saying Greco-Roman. See, so once again, the focus today is what? Talking about these babies. Right? Amen, Aphrodisiac, talking about these babies. And these babies are not being taught that they have a modified version of truth. And see, we got to figure out the environment we're getting this stuff from. It's crazy when we don't even look at the environment. Beat your child to the white meat show. I'm going to beat you to the white meat. That's something that modern psychologists of certain groups of people said they should do to slaves, because to be dark skinned was considered to be a mental illness. Therefore, when you beat them to the white meat shows, you're actually beating them until purity and holiness comes out. See, y'all think it's separation of church and state and this stuff. No, you beat them till holiness comes out of them. That's why you beat them to the white meat. The precept is jacked. How you doing, Line Painter? How you doing? See, the precept is jacked. And you don't even know why you're repeating that. You're just repeating it. I only whip you. I'm not saying you can't spank. I'm not saying you can't discipline, but I whipped you because I love you. Well, you did that because the master would have overseers, and the overseers took pride in being able to really jack somebody up and let them still live through the beating, through the whipping. So they would have family members come and whip you instead of the overseer, and they would have the family member do as best they can, but the family member realized even in giving you a severe whipping, they could never whip you the same way the overseer could. So when they whipped you because they loved you. You put your hand up and teach your children. Put your hand up when you leave in church to make sure that you say you're excused, to make sure you're excused. And the reality is, when you were a slave, the slaves, when sometimes, a lot of times they didn't have service together, but sometimes slaves and the I guess we'll call, say, by colonial construct, social construct, white people, right? The slaves and the free people, the white people in this instance, would have service together. And so guess what? During the service, they would sit on the floor and you would sit in the balcony. That's why they call it the peanut gallery, by the way. You ever heard somebody say the peanut gallery? The peanut gallery is talking about brown folk, black folk, who would be up in the gallery, peanuts, nutty, right? Peanuts, brown folk, the peanut gallery up there. And if you got up to go somewhere, everybody would take notice. What is this person doing? They can hear you walking. They would even design sometimes the floor. If you've ever been to some of these places, you can hear clearly when somebody starts moving around. They would design some of it where you could even hear the creaks. So they'd be like, who's leaving? And then you see a slave's finger go up and they say, it's me. But we're passing that down to the children. That's why you wear white gloves and put one hand behind your back. You will wear white gloves, not because it's holy. You will wear white gloves because white people didn't want to see black hands touching their items, right? So since they didn't want to see that, you would wear white gloves to ensure that black hands didn't touch your items. And if you were doing an offering and black people had to collect it for you, they dang sure wanted to make sure that you put one hand behind your back, because you didn't want the slave, because all slaves are supposed to be thieves. So you made sure you put your hand, that they're gonna put their hand in and steal it. So make them have one hand behind their back. And then what do? You bring it up in front of everybody. Everybody stands and everybody can look and make sure that while the prayer is going on, we can keep an eye on that. And by the way, all the slaves are supposed to come and dump with their one hand, dump what they got into the basket, right? The main basket. And then the person, they pray over it, and then all the slaves, they go back to their position, right? The ushers, they go back to their position. Right? They go back to their position, and then the person takes the money in the back and they count it. The people that can be trusted, the overseers that can be trusted, they take it back and service can continue. And then they come with a report that they give to the pastor, who's going to be really either the overseer or the slave master, so that he can know this is exactly what we made. It wasn't about doing anything for the people. That's why you still have black folk that carry that same mentality. You still have black folk that carry that same mentality. Right. And by the way, when I say black folk, Negro could mean native, indigenous to the Americas. It could mean African. It could mean from West Indies. It could mean as long as you were dark skinned. Right. So you got black folks still to this day, or Negroes still to this day, or colored people still to this day, or people now they want to be African Americans still to this day, whatever you want to call yourself. Right. Even our Moorish brethren, our Israelite brethren, whatever title you have a lot of people that still go to these same assemblies with that same mindset, doing the same thing to each other. They got this big chair in there, the big chair, right? Your overseers sit in the big chair, or the pastor sits in the big chair, or the big chair is even left empty. Why? Because it's a sign that if the overseer wasn't there, you still never got to sit in his chair. It wasn't holy to sit in the overseer's chair. And we do the same thing. Thank you for the love. We do the same thing. We pass it down to our children. See, the code for children has become different. No wonder these babies are messed up. Seek and ye shall find. Not everything will come easily or taught. Some things must be sought. Amen. Ashe. Right? Like, these are real. New urban, new version. Yeah, right. Because now it's urban music, urban community, urban. It's the code for black. So when they talk about urban children, how they teaching your children? I mean, reading. Dr. Carter G. Woodson's a great place. Dr. Cloud Anderson, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, Dr. Neely Fuller Jr. He talks about code specifically. Dr. Amos Wilson, he gonna give you an education on Afrocentricity that you've never even had before. Heck, even colonial construct, social construct, white folk. Dr. Tim Wise, Dr. Jane Elliott, going back to the diaspora. Dr. Joy DeGroy, book PTSS, Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Going back to Dr. Carter G. Woodson, don't forget he wrote many, many books, but the one that we always give him credit for is The Miseducation of the American Negro, which is where you get Lauryn Hill's title from. She played off that to say the miseducation of Lauryn Hill, right? That was where she got that from. This is stuff that's there written before you. By the way, don't just stop there, because your history doesn't start at 1860. Go back to Olaudah Equiano. He's an African who literally wrote a book after he was freed from slavery. He was taken when he was a young child. He didn't remember his childhood. He was able to buy his freedom being a child on the ship. He was able to save enough money, buy his freedom by age 20. He got his house, everything together, became a freedman before freedman was the thing to call us. And then all of a sudden he read the Bible, because he kept hearing people talk about the Bible. He read it and he said, wait a minute, all the things that they keep and all the culture that they do, we did that back home. And he's from Nigeria. He's like, we did that back home as Igbo people. He said, wow. He said, he said, I must be an Israelite. Wow, I didn't know that. Right? Now go back to Negro land. Negro land, the 1700s. See, this is stuff we should be teaching our children to give them the code. Go back to Negro land, map written that the United States Corporation still has in the Library of Congress. You can go look it up online and type in Negro land or Negro land map. I'm not sure which one you have to have. Thank you for the love. Oh, I've never seen that one. Thank you for the love. Appreciate it. Right? So you can go look it up, called Negro land. There's a map called Negro land. You can Google search it. Map called Negro land. And if you get the right map and one you can zoom in on, you'll see that it says Negro land, and then on the bottom it says Guinea. This is in West Africa, right? And they call these people Negroes. By the way, one of the most ancient ways of calling West Africans, one of the most ancient names for West Africans that exist was actually Negro. You think it's beautiful. I mean, I'm sorry, beautiful. You think it's new. I'm looking at the comments at the same time, right? But you go there and you look on the map, and you'll see on the map, look down, right, where my people are from, Shwit, but you might call them Ghanaian, modern Ghanaians, because there's ancient Ghana and modern Ghana. And these modern Ghanaians, and when you look over there, you'll see what? The Bread Coast, the Gold Coast, the Ivory Coast, which actually is a people's name, Ifre, which means Afra or Israelite or Hebrew people, but people don't know that. Or keep on going to what? You'll also go to what is it? I'm sorry. Oh, and then Slave Coast. In the Slave Coast, the point of no return. Been there, done that, right? The Slave Coast, when you go there to the castles, Amina Castle specifically, but many castles over there. But when you go over there, you'll see that they also, where these castles are, they have a place on the map in the 1700s. They call it where the scattered Israelites are. They also say it's the Kingdom of Judah. We talked about that some in our time code piece, right? So if you want to go there for confirmation to get more out of that, look at the time code piece, right? But it literally tells you that the children of Israel who were scattered, they lived in this area of West Africa. It literally tells us that. It's not even a problem for them to tell you. It's not even a problem. Have you ever checked out St. Thomas? Right? Those of us who just did Reclaiming the Throne watch parties and stuff together. Have you ever looked at St. Thomas and the history of St. Thomas, where they come from? When they started having Negroes come over there, they started calling Negroes people that were Sephardic Jews. They said that the Sephardic Jews, they didn't even use the term Jew yet because there was no letter J, but now we would say they're Sephardic Jews. Well, if you look up the term for Sephardic Jew and look up what they said about them, right? In the people who wrote in the 1800s, people who wrote in the 1600s, people who wrote in the 1400s, they will tell you that Sephardic Jews were slim, they were black, they kept the law, and that they were the people who were dealt with in the Inquisition, the Roman Catholic Inquisition that you think is only the Spanish Inquisition, don't even know about the Portuguese part of it, and don't even know about the English and the Dutch and all the other stuff that was happening. But the Inquisition was coming against people, and they even had tools that they used against these people of color that they would call Hebrew torture devices. This is stuff that you can read for yourself. Read your Bible, it'll bless you. How about read historical documentation, it'll bless you? How you doing, old head energy? This is stuff that's there. And they called you Negro because they knew that you came from West Africa. They knew you were Moorish. And only people who kept certain customs and traditions were Negro. Do you know that when you look it up, this is all stuff even out of the video we just watched, those who did the watch party. Do you know that when you see us in black hoodies, do you know that they used to put over in Portugal? They used to have you where you had to wear, if you were a black Israelite in Portugal at the time, when they started taking over, that they had you put on hoods, and they were hoodies. You had to wear these hoodies to represent who you were. They had to be black hoodies. And you know that these people would actually, and these people who wore black hoodies, they said that they had black skin. They said that they had hair like wool. And said that they used to do poetry to music. What does that sound like to you? Hip hop, rap. They said back then. So you think hip hop started with James Brown or maybe starts with somebody from the 1930s? No, no, no. Like we used to literally put music or play music and have somebody spit poetry over it. You might even call it a freestyle, right? Do you know that these same people that had to wear this stuff and all that stuff or whatever, they also were put in things called ghettos? You think ghettos only existed for people in the Holocaust? No, 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 no. It was something that Hitler did. Hitler told y'all straight up, read Hitler before we talk about stuff. Read Hitler before y'all talk about this stuff. You're just saying, oh, this and that, or blah, blah. You just believe that we're making stuff up. Read what Hitler said. Hitler said that he believed that the Jews, now I'm not saying he should have killed them, but he used this as an excuse. So you can take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt all you want. But you know, Hitler straight up said that the people who were saying they were Jews, they're not the real Jews anyways. Now, Hitler was somebody to still be off his mind, or somebody who had cognitive dissonance, because he would kill his own family member because they were these fake Jews. He said, but he wouldn't kill himself, and they were his family, you know. But nevertheless, like Hitler sold you on like, oh no, they're not the Jews. Matter of fact, look up what happened in the 1940s when Israel becomes a nation or whatever, and they want everybody to recognize their sovereignty. Like America already has, and France already has, and Russia already has, and England already has, because they're the ones that gave them the weapons and helped them and told them they could take the land when they got it through the war. Right, the Rothschilds made a deal with them or whatever, and the Rothschilds people got to come in there to start making money for the Rothschilds. Right, but when they asked Egypt, even though the Egyptian prime minister was not Kemetic, but he still told the truth. They asked Egypt, recognize us as a sovereign nation, and they said no. Egypt said no, and they said, well, why won't you recognize us? The prime minister said, hey, when you left, you were black. Now that you come back, you are white. In other words, you can't be the same people that left. Even he, who was acting some kind of way towards the Kemetic and black folk in his region, him being probably more French than he is Arabic, or definitely being more Arabic and French than he is Kemetic, and enslaving people and being part of the slave trade in that area, he still was like, yo, I can't, if you want to go ahead and say that you something else, say you something else, but I'm not going to play with you and act like you're somebody that you're not, even though he's somebody who pretends to be somebody that he's not. He still had to say, no, we ain't rolling like that. Do you know that Christopher Columbus, when he comes over to the Americas, he came looking for the land of Asheroth? Queen Isabella knew what the land of Asheroth was. So did the Pope, because they read the Apocrypha, Second Esdras, chapter 13, verses 40 through 45. So they brought a Hebrew interpreter, and it was through the Hebrew interpreter that they realized that they made guanine weapons and were mixing with Israelites from West Africa already, and that they spoke an Israelite dialect, because you can't bring a Hebrew interpreter to speak to somebody, the people who are over there, that you don't think they speak Hebrew. And the reason Christopher Columbus knew this was because at least 10 years prior, at the least, so at least 10 years prior, he was already sailing with Africans who were telling him how to get over to this, what they now try to tell you, a new world. But how can something be new if there was already an African telling you this how you get over there? Now, question, and all this stuff, and how you doing on the way? Question for you. How much of this is taught to your child? Because once again, what are we talking about? The code for children. And everybody who's on the podcast, thank you so much. We're going to take our leave on the podcast. Feel free to check out the rest on Facebook or on YouTube. Thank you. Right. But so for the rest of us that are on right now, as we're getting ready to bring Facebook family in, how many of your children know this? You said it's the Kemetic Trinity. I mean, I think you should learn as much as you can. I think that you got to realize there's certain things that are Kemetic and don't come over to Israel, because that's kind of one of the things that starts happening too. Because people start going, well, since Roman Catholics like to take everything, then the Israelites must have taken that. But the Osiris Isis Heru story is not really Father Son, Holy Spirit type thing or whatever, right? Because even if you look at it, Osiris, now they actually do the same thing in America, because Americans try to take that Trinity for themselves. So like Osiris, for example, Osiris is somebody who the other Netchers don't like. They kill him. They kill the Netchers, right? Or they kill him. They rip him apart. They put his body parts in different places or whatever, including his phallus. That's important to know, because here comes his wife, Isis. Isis is flying around trying to get to Osiris, right? Then all of a sudden she can't. She's like, "Where's my husband?" Starts realizing her husband's body parts are scattered all over the place. So she gets them together, trying to put them back together so he would live, but she can't find all his body parts. So she basically makes a mock phallus or a mock penis, or what some would call a dildo. That's what the obelisk is. And she takes the obelisk and she puts it in place of the penis. Now, depending on the version you read from that point on, either he was dead and she had sex with him and got pregnant with Heru, or he was a zombie and she got pregnant with him. And either way, it's necrophilia, but she wanted to give birth to something from him. So she rides on the obelisk, she gets pregnant, and then from that point on, or then Heru is born, right? Out of that. That's a whole different type of story, right? Now, though, even though it's not Father, Son, Holy Spirit, how we recognize Father, Son, Holy Spirit, at the same time, let's look at the United States of America, the corporation. By the way, you'll see an obelisk in the Vatican too, and you'll see an obelisk in Memphis as well, and you'll see an obelisk in different places all over the planet. So pay attention to where those obelisks are, right? You'll see my obelisk in a lot of different art museums and stuff. We're not even aware what people mean when they say obelisk. But let's hip you to the game. For those of you who don't know this, a lot of you probably do already because you've heard me say it enough times. But if you go to the National Mall, Washington, D.C., and you decide you're going to go to the National Mall, and you decide that you want to stand on the National Mall in between the Congress building, right? The same one that they attacked in last year, or is it 2 years? Wow, time flies. 2 years ago, the one that they attacked on January 7th, 2021. If you go there and you look towards that Congress building, you'll see a woman with feathers, just like Isis was a woman and a bird. But this one they call Columbia. They use a Greek goddess, changing the story up a little bit. And then you look the other way, you'll see an obelisk from the ground, George Washington. Now remember, what was the obelisk supposed to represent? It was supposed to represent a mock penis or a mock phallus or a dildo, if you will, right? That allows seed to come through it. So George Washington, guess what happened to him? He died of syphilis. That means that his phallus didn't work. Even the code for children is it starts getting a little wild when you start realizing what's going on. See, his phallus didn't work. So he had an obelisk to make up for the fact his phallus didn't work. And this goddess, who's supposed to represent this Netcher Isis, who you call Columbia, this goddess Columbia, this deity Columbia, she's on top of the Congress building. And at the time when it was originally built, nothing was ever supposed to be higher than her, because she was supposed to be able to fly around looking for her husband's body pieces to put them together to then get on top of the obelisk. And now that she gets on top of the obelisk, she's supposed to give birth to Heru, right? But she's on top of where? The Congress building, right? So if she's on top of the Congress building, well, what's happening? That means everybody who's born out of Congress is supposed to be Heru in their mind. That's how they're doing it. They took the culture and they flipped it. So whenever you see it, whenever you saw all that stuff that was going on, right? Whenever you see all these changes happening, whenever it's a spiritual attack, but we don't see it that way because we don't care about what? The culture. We don't care about that. We don't want to care about it. We don't want to know it. We don't need to know it. We don't want to honor it. Right? Like, this is the code, right? So the children of the modern Isis and the modern Osiris are the children of Washington, D.C. Amen. You see that? Do you see that precept? The environment where you accept the idea comes out of, become dangerous, becomes a concept. Now you become one with it. And Mika Shael or Micah Shael, thanks for being part of the community. Joseph, thanks for being part of the community as well. You see, it's dangerous. How you doing, Sister Betty? It's dangerous when you don't know where you're getting these ideas from. You sitting up here talking about Washington, D.C. Do you know that Washington, D.C. is technically not even a territory anymore? It's technically not even a real place anymore. Did you know that? See, yeah, you in spiritual Kemet, you in spiritual Egypt and don't even know. They telling you where you are and you don't know how to read it. See, the enemy has to follow law. Even if he's going to break the law or get you to break the law, he's not going to, he can only suggest that you break the law. He has to even be lawful in getting you to break the law. He has to tell you. He has to show you. He got to put that pyramid on the dollar bill and put that obelisk on there. He got to put that person that's hanging from there, but it looks like it's got to be hidden in. You're right. You turn the dollar bill over. It looks like it's hanging, but it looks like a light at the same time. Is it the light or is it hanging? I mean, is it the light or is it hanging? Is it the light or is it death? They're telling you this. He got to tell you. In everything that he does, he has to tell you the truth. He has to watch. You have to watch it in the movie first. Oh, that's crazy what they did in that movie. Could you imagine if we were in the Matrix and they were having babies be born like that? Oh, actually, they're about to have babies being born like that. No, you messing with me. How you doing, brother TJ? You messing with it. No. Like they're about to start having babies be born like that. They put it in front of your eyes. Some of y'all watching Lucifer right now. I haven't seen enough of it to really know which way. I mean, I know it's evil what I've seen, but they trying to make Lucifer feel like he's a great guy. Doesn't that sound like some Antichrist spirit type stuff? But you got to agree with it. You got to watch it. You got to have it go through your gates. Guard your gates, everybody says, but you ain't guarding your gate. You got to agree with this stuff. We talked about this yesterday. Your children are watching things. You know them before you can watch, before you can even sit down and really enjoy a movie. You have to do something called suspension of disbelief. They know in the first 33 seconds or so, your mind is conditioned to shut off whatever you're watching as far as it not being factual. They know in your mind that if they put on a movie, after the first 33 seconds, you have to agree to say that this movie is real in order to enjoy it. See, I used to love movies. I used to love the behind the scenes stuff, but so I always enjoyed how they made the movie. But I used to love watching movies. But once you start learning that they're doing that, I can't even really enjoy the movies the same. I go now to spend time with people and to at least kind of know what's going on with some of this stuff. But I can't really enjoy movies the same because the whole time I'm looking to see what do they want me to agree to? What do they want me to agree to? What do they want me to agree to? Yeah, the Baby's Factory is straight up evil. Straight evil. And the Jurassic Park, they might not have Jurassic Park ready for you, but you've been seeing stuff in zoos and stuff like that. You might want to start paying attention to how these animals are dying and how they're looking and how they're looking a little crazy. They don't act the same because there's cloning going on. That's not even a secret, right? Yeah, I didn't say anything secretive about that. I didn't say anything that's conspiracy theory, theoretical. Like they told us that. Your children are growing up in this, y'all. So you got to train them up in the way they should go. So when you finish aiming them and you let go, they will not depart from the path, no matter how much. See, because watch this. Once again, I said this earlier. I'll say it again. Your children are going through the air. Yeah, Tasmanian tigers they're trying to bring back. They're trying to bring back. They're going to try to have to start doing it with Tasmanian devils because they're about to go extinct. They're probably going to have to do it with koalas at some point. They have tried to do it with mammoths and stuff as well, right? So this stuff is already happening. This stuff is already happening. They've been trying for a long time. They've been trying not just to clone you. Like there's evidence. We know that they've literally, we know like there's evidence. They have literally tried to make half man, half chimp, half man. Like this is not. I'm not making this up. Like you can look at this stuff for yourself, right? That's what we always want you to do, anyways. Don't just believe it because I say it. But they've tried to make half man, half chimp before. They tried to make half man, I think half man, half dolphin, right? Some people even believe, like if you've ever seen this half man, half dolphin going around or whatever, that's probably, when people be saying that they believe that they've seen, especially modern times, if you've seen a mermaid or a merman or something like that, it might be because it's something that was actually tried to be created. And that's why you see so few of them because they can't reproduce because they're clones. You know, like we're not making stuff up just off the top of the head. This stuff has been released. They told you, yeah, like, yeah, we tried to make a half man, half chimp. So of course you might have seen there might have been a Bigfoot. See, I don't have a problem with Bigfoot because they told you they tried to make it. Why would they tell you if it was successful or not? But they did admit they tried to make it. Because it used to be that when they tried to do this stuff, they didn't have to make sure it was classified. See, some of this stuff we have to wonder how much of it they're releasing or why are they releasing it, when they're releasing it. Some of this stuff, so especially stuff from back in the day, you know, and even in the early 1900s, even probably into some of this stuff, the 1950s, 1960s. Like we didn't have to, you know, they didn't have to really cover stuff up because there wasn't as much technology. Now, remember I said, train up a child in the way that they should go, talking about the arrow that you're releasing, right? They need direction. They need to go to a place. They need to be able to bend, all this stuff that we talked about earlier, right? Why is that so important? Train up a child in the way that they should go. Train up a child in the direction that they should be going in. Why is that so important for us, right? Obviously, many different reasons, but as far as they're going through the air, peep game, what is one of the Satan's titles? What is one of the devil's titles that's used for him? He is called the Prince of the what? Somebody help me out. I just gave you a hint already. He's called the Prince of the what? How you doing, Sister Juanetta? How you doing, Rocky? How you doing? Thanks for being part of the community. Ruski is Ruski, right? He's called, and I'm Boss Talker. Thanks for being part of the community as well. So they can hit the mark, exactly, right? Because to sin basically just means to miss the mark. But he's called, yep, the Prince of Darkness, yes, but also he's called the Prince of the Air. When things go through the airwaves, there's more demonic stuff than there is kingdom stuff. Why? Why is there going to be more demonic stuff? Because he's the Prince of the Air. He's the Prince of the Air. So the airwaves, he's the prince of. He's not the king of it. Praise God. But he is the prince of it. In other words, hey, Yahweh's going to give you free will. You're going to look at what's on the air. He's trying to see, will you do what you're supposed to do? We don't like to be interdependent. But there's people like saying they were independent. You really try to be dependent. I'm dependent totally on Yah. But Yah says that you have to be a workman that need not be ashamed, right? Study to show thyself approved under Alacham, that you might be what? A workman or a workwoman. Where are your works at? That needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So you like to be dependent. Yah's going to do it. But Yah says, I need to see if you'll do it. When you do what you do, I'll match. That's covenant. If you do this, then I'll do this. That's how covenant works. This is why a lot of people's marriages don't work and why your children get in marriages that don't work, because they've never seen you be in covenant. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Even the way the Satan is created, exactly right. He was created, why? Why is he the prince of the air? The way he was created was originally he was created like an organ, like a percussive organ. It said that he was basically like an organ that was played upon, and he also was like percussion music. And when all he had to do was be in position, all the Satan, all the devil had to do was be in position. When he was authorizing the kingdom, all he had to do was be in position, and the Most High would blow a wind through him. And when the Most High blew this spirit, this wind upon him, it would blow through him. It would come out, and it would be beautiful music, and all the hosts of heaven would be in praise and worship, in conjunction with this music. How you doing, Teflon Sensei? Right? They would come together, and they would be loving, and they would be in conjunction with this beautiful music that was playing. Right? That's all they had to do was just be. All he had to do was be in position. But then he started going to himself. It says he started saying, "Wow, you know what? These people worship me. They love my music. They love my gift. But you were created, and if the Most High didn't give you the wind, the spirit, then nobody would be praising and worshiping anyways. So he gets kicked out. But guess what? Remember, the sins come without repentance. Sin comes without repentance. I'm sorry, not sin. Sorry. Rewind it. Sorry, take that out your mind. My bad. The gifts come without repentance. So he had a gift where he could give praise and worship. He was kicked out of heaven. He couldn't stay there anymore. He could come visit from time to time until he was ultimately kicked out at the end. Because remember, he went back. He was going back and forth with the whole Job thing. So he can go for a little while until he was ultimately like, okay, you can't even come back no more, right? So, but he could come back, and go to worship services, the Most High was still giving him every opportunity, just like Judas Iscariot was given every opportunity to get it together. Hey, Judas, don't trip off of her using this. Don't think about money only. Don't do this. But Judas still was money hungry. Next thing you know, he does something. He still could have asked for forgiveness and said he hangs himself. Right? The devil was given every opportunity until finally you went too far. Now you kicked out, and you got to take this. You got to take this whipping. Right? But guess what? That person that was kicked out of heaven, he wasn't kicked out of heaven and went to Sha'al or went to hell. He's not in hell yet. Right? He's not in hell yet. Hear that again. He's not in hell yet. You hear that? He's not in hell yet. So if he's not in hell, he's on the earth. What did he say even in Job? The Most High said, what you doing here? Where have you been? What you here? Like, what you been doing? And the devil didn't say, oh, you know what? You had me in hell and I found a way to get back. No, he said, no, I've been roaming the earth, going to and fro, seeking whom I may devour. Now you got scripture that tells you he is the prince of the air. So if he is the prince of the air, he's on the airwaves. He's not allowed to have a body. That's why he's got to take over yours. He's just walking back and forth, seeking who's going to give him access to their body next. Who's going to allow him to be able to do something. Once he gets that body, he already knows how it works. Because once again, Yahweh used to do it to him. See, y'all be saying weird stuff. And I'm not saying you shouldn't speak in tongues. Speak in tongues. Speak in tongues, right? If that's your gift, speak in tongues. But hear what I'm saying. Y'all don't comprehend it. Y'all be saying stuff like, I've heard people say, I wish I had a tongue, a church that could speak in tongues and that we can make sure that we confuse the enemy. Speak in tongues right now that you might confuse the enemy. but he knew the tongues before you knew the tongues. He knows more of the Bible than you know the Bible. See, don't get confused with people out here that know the Bible. See, just because somebody know the Bible doesn't mean that they acting right with their children. Don't get confused when you're like, why does it seem like these PKs, people call them? I didn't know they called them that till I started going to church, before I got out of there. But don't be surprised when these PKs or these preachers' kids always seem to be the worst ones. Why are they always the worst ones? Because just because you know the word doesn't mean that you live it. Or matter of fact, we can't say you know the word, because to know it means to be intimate. So just because you're aware of how the word works, just because you have a gift to preach or a gift to pastor or a gift to write or a gift to play music or a gift to sing or a gift to speak in tongues or a gift to interpret or a gift to dream or a gift to interpret dreams, whatever the case might be, just because you have it, the gifts come without repentance. You were created with the gift inside you. Whether you repent or not, the gift is there. I want to send my child to that school because, in that school, they teach them music. But be careful. Just because they teach music and they have a gift doesn't mean they've repented. Salah. That's real. The gifts come without repentance. I mean, R. Kelly, Jay-Z, Beyonce. I mean, you can keep on going if you want. You want to get Elvis Presley. We talked about Elvis last night and Jerry Lee Lewis last night and Hugh Hefner last night. And what's the name of the girl? Oh, gosh, I'm about to say that's the wrong name. I can't even, something Brooks, is it? The little girl, she was 10 years old. They had her in a Playboy magazine article at 10 years old. Something Brooks or Brooks something. Brooke Shields. Brooke Shields, 10 years old, was buck naked in Playboy. In a article, look it up if you want. It's called, well, don't look it up to look for it, but if you want to look up it, see if I'm telling the truth. It was called Sugar and Spice, apparently. I just found that out yesterday before we went on in the evening live session. Brooke Shields. Of course, Brooke Shields' mind was going to be messed up. And people let it go like it was nothing. Elvis Presley marrying a little girl, 13 years old, was he when they got married? Or at least when they started having sex. Nobody said a thing. Jerry Lee Lewis married his own cousin, 13 years old. Nobody said the same thing. And then had dared to tell you that these people are the king of rock and roll and stuff. But they ain't gonna tell you about Chuck Berry, and they ain't gonna tell you about your own. And by the way, even with Chuck, let's be honest, Chuck was doing some wild stuff too. Because when you're in that system, not all skin folk is kinfolk. You got to look for their actions. You got to look at what they say. You got to look at what they speak. I'm not saying we shouldn't have our own standard for rock and our own standard for R&B, right? But let's be honest. Like, Marvin Gaye was on drugs, yo. And nobody was willing to say to him, out of love, like, maybe we need to stop this, bro. Like, maybe we won't hire you. Maybe we don't want you to be part of our sound. You had the Temptations. They knew that one of the Temptations was on drugs. They knew it was only a matter of time. Matter of fact, they knew it was so bad that it split up the group. They had 2 different Temptation groups. Y'all remember that? Some of y'all may or may not remember that. There were 2 different Temptation groups traveling around, singing the hits. And people were paying both of them, dealing with drugs, dealing with all this stuff. See, they don't care about your children. Yeah, you got to protect the babies. They don't care about them. That's not their goal. You think school is designed to protect children? Teachers sleep with children. You think school is designed to protect your children? And if you're a female teacher, you usually get away with it a lot longer than a male teacher will, because we have some really warped stuff in masculinity and femininity that says that it's not okay for a little girl to be touched and molested and stuff like that by a male teacher, but it is okay for a female to do it. It's wrong either way, y'all. I mean, you can talk about Chris Carter. I don't know enough about to talk about that one. I can tell you about. Don't forget about Usher. Everybody talks about Usher and Jermaine Dupri and all that. Before Jermaine Dupri, not even the problem with Usher. You know that before Usher was 16 and started coming out with the albums, when Usher was like 10 years old, he was with Puff Daddy, living in Puff Daddy's home. And Puff Daddy has already slipped up a couple times and said some stuff where you like, whoa, what you say? Like, he used to say stuff like, oh yeah, we were 10 years old, we be wrestling. Then he say, pause. Why are you saying pause about wrestling? Like, boys wrestle or whatever. Then he tried to change it and be like, oh, well, we would wake up and we be wrestling over the cereal, over the Fruit Loops. And then that was more sus. I was like, wait a minute, what? Puff Daddy out there talking about, if we haven't had no parties with one another. You got to know the language. See, like, there's certain language that they speak. When they talk about stuff like pineapple or pizza or partying, they talking about messing with little boys. And sometimes little girls too. But so you rather send them somewhere else, and how you doing? Is it I don't know how to pronounce it, Daenerys? Hopefully I said that somewhat correctly. Thanks for being on, right? But we're more concerned about their environment than ours. Be strong as a husband and wife. You know what a husband and wife is. Know what you should and shouldn't say. Y'all don't even get it. When The Rock makes a joke and they say, what do you do? He says, oh, I eat children. He's like, no. If you hear somebody say I eat children, that's code. That's code. They doing something that eats up their soul. That's code. Yeah, he wasn't joking. Remember, he was on Saturday Night Live and had a whole thing where his whole thing was to like get worse and worse. He was talking about being with children, doing this, doing that, or whatever. Like, no, that's code. What was it in Washington, D.C.? They had that restaurant where they talking about pizza and all those children that were having disgusting stuff done, and even they talking about they might be killing them and stuff like that. That's code. That's why people say that. You got to be careful. I'm not saying you can't go to Pizza Hut today, right? But I'm here to tell you, if somebody start talking about pizza and they start talking about children or something, pizza in place you would normally put a child or something in there, they're talking to you. They're telling you. They're trying to see, do you speak the same code? That's what you got to speak in code, because it's technically not lawful, but everybody who makes the law, a lot of them, they let it go anyways. Do you ever heard of twink parties? Do you know what a twink is from a Twinkie? Do you know what a twink is? Twinkies? I get disgusted because I used to like eating them things. Then they started using that. I can't even look at them the same. I get sick now if I try to eat them. They have twink parties. That's supposed to be teenage boys, maybe not quite pubescent, but sometimes even pubescent, but teenage boys, basically, and you bring them to parties. They basically are dressed very effeminate. You cut their hair certain ways, and you go ahead and have them do that. By the way, the guy who made who did the newer Star Trek. No, the X-Men movies, and I think it's the X-Men. I don't know if it's the newer X-Men movies or the one that started with what's his face, who's very effeminate himself, but he plays Wolverine, and I think because he acts masculine that he's not effeminate. But what's his name? I don't even know his name. The Australian cat, uh, who does a lot of and I'm not even mad at him for just. I'm not even saying it just because he does a lot of Broadway, or not Broadway, but a lot of musical stuff. But he's very effeminate when you like listen to him speak and stuff. But the guy who directed it, he was known for having twink parties. Hugh Jackman, yeah, but that's not the guy I'm necessarily focusing on, even though he is effeminate. But he might have got the role because he was effeminate. He's known for having the guy who directed it came up with the first ones was X-Men, and then X-Men: The Last Stand, and in between there was X-Men something else. Those particular ones, I'm pretty sure is that guy. He's known for having twink parties. Is that is what's his face too? You talking about the original? Because there's Captain Picard, that's the next generation. There's the black captain, like, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name from Deep Space Nine. I used to watch it though. And then what's the original Captain Kirk? You talking about Captain Kirk? William Shatner? If he got stuff I didn't even know. Right? But I'm just trying to tell you, like, this stuff is out there. And see, there's a code for children. We should have a code for children that protects. They have a code for children that they get into. Brian Singer, okay. No, not Patrick Stewart. But William Shatner. Patrick Stewart's the one from the Next Generation, the bald headed one, right? Or the one that had the cul-de-sac. I think he's completely bald now, right? But he's the one that played Professor X. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Wow, yeah. I mean, because it's out there. Like, this stuff is out there. Like, it's legit. It's craziness how much of it's out there. Nobody says anything about it. Nobody says anything about it. I mean, that's what they call it, right? The little cul-de-sac. I'm not trying to joan. Not trying to play the dozens. I'm just saying that's what they call it, right? You said he was a robot in the skit, or was he a robot? Okay, I thought he had made a robot or something. Wasn't it that the Rock in that skit? Isn't it that he made a robot, and it was like evil, and it was like with all these people that were supposed to be like the evil scientists, and they had this thing, and they were trying to figure out who had the best evil, who came up with the best evil whatever. And when he came up with it, they were trying to basically like it was he made a robot that basically like SA children, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And they try to make a joke out of it, like, "Oh, that's terrible! I can't believe you did it. This work." They were saying it's bad, but he kept on going and going and going. And by the way, if The Rock did the skit on Saturday Night Live, guess what that means? That means he did not write the skit. He just acted it out. And he acted it out because that's on brand for him to be able to go to the next level. The stuff didn't break off for The Rock. He was still wrestling. He was still dealing with what coming out of maybe he had done that movie. I actually like that movie. Now it's hard for me to separate from him now, but the movie, what was it, when he was getting revenge for his brother and killed all those people off? He had done little things like that. He had done the Mummy too, with the terrible looking terrible in the 3D or whatever, in the virtual reality. He had done then the Scorpion King, but he wasn't really taking off. Walking Tall, thank you. Like, I actually like that movie. Now it's hard for me to separate the movie from that stuff too, but like, he had done stuff like that, and then all of a sudden he did that skit. What happened? Got his own company now, is being able to shelter himself. He doesn't have to worry about anybody trying to go after his tracks. He in essence is the people that we talk bad about. He in essence has become Epstein. You can't touch him. You can't touch him. Oh, it's Driven I was thinking about. It's not Walking Tall. You're absolutely correct. Driven. That's the movie. That's the movie right there. Driven. Yeah, that's the movie. Right. I used to love that movie, and I still do, but it's like I can't watch it. But so many minutes now, I got to turn it off because I'm like, I can't even watch it straight through because Rock, what was you doing? What you out here doing to these babies? But if you know how the wrestling business works, remember that's what his daddy comes out of. Well, they mess with little children over there. Yeah, now he's Black Adam, trying to defend it, not doing that well either. But that's another story. But see, if you know what his childhood was about, remember when he was a little child, he was around all the wrestlers, all these wrestlers. By the way, think about the children code. We see the code for children. Your children grew up watching. We grew up watching, not realizing how wild it is that we think like those of you, I'm gonna take you back for those of you who were in the wrestling. I'm sorry, if I'm gonna mess with your childhood a little bit, I apologize. But see, I got to get you out of some mindset that we had to start realizing how warped it was. So I apologize if I'm gonna mess up your childhood, but I'm about to show you some truth. Right? How you doing, Chris? Thanks for being part of on with us today. So let me give you some truth. You ready for this? You remember Hulk Hogan against the Ultimate Warrior, right? Y'all remember that? Okay. You remember that Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, they hold hands in the middle of the ring? Y'all remember that? They're going for the championship. Ultimate Warrior, the Intercontinental Champion. Hulk Hogan's the heavyweight champion. They're trying to see who's going to go against each other. They're holding hands, and they start doing that mercy thing. You know, you play mercy with your friends. When you play mercy with your friends, you don't go down on the ground, right? If your friend beating you or whatever, you can't take it, you say mercy, and you let go, right? But when they play mercy, they hold hands. They start off, they bump chests, right? They go into each other's chests, and they go like this. They're open, right? They touch their heads with each other's head, right? You've seen this. I'm sorry if I'm gonna ruin your childhood, but we got to tell you, you grew up in some wild precepts, some wild environments. You hold hands and you press down on the other person, and the other person goes down to their knees. And when they go down to their knees, guess where their face is in front of? The other person's phallus, right? And then the person rises back up though, and then they go ahead and they get the power. The other person goes down, and they get the power, and then the other person goes down in front of their phallus. You saw it right in front of you, and never even thought about it. But somebody would say, "Oh, you're just, no, they didn't mess with us as children like that. That's too much." Okay, well, why are they all pretty much buck naked in the ring? Oiled up, by the way. That was always wild to me. They oiled up, buck naked, tanning themselves to make sure that they're attractive. All right, somebody like that, or whatever. What about them headlocks and stuff where you be right behind them? You can do a headlock from any position. Why is the headlock, now I know there's the headlock that they do from the side when they get ready and they throw them off the ropes and stuff. But why is it that the headlock, the sleeper hold, if you like that one better, why is that always from right behind? Do you know certain terms? See, certain people never got into the behind the scenes stuff of wrestling, even though you knew it was fake. Well, we didn't think like that. Right? But they put that in your mindset. Remember, what is the definition, even the Greek word, if you want to go there, what is the definition, though, of fornication? Fornication is called porneia or porneia. In other words, it's pornography, it's porn. Fornication is when you have a false version of marriage put in the mindset or the false imagery of marriage. That pile driver, hey. The tombstone, hey. Right? Like, that's not even something that people would do in a regular fight. I mean, I guess you could say the figure four, right? But I'm just saying, like, all the stuff. By the way, here's some stuff that you call it in wrestling terminology. You ready? There's something called a pop. You want the crowd to pop. Why do you call it when the crowd pops? Wrestlers want the crowd to pop. Why do you call it a pop? Because they liken it to an orgasm. Some of them would even say they want the crowd to come. They want it to pop. So they literally do certain things, hoping that the crowd goes down. They say they do foreplay. You start off slow. You make sure that you give them stuff. You introduce things. Everybody's excited you're coming. You take off your clothing. You get in the ring. You start to do things slow. Next thing you're doing, you're slowing down. You're doing this, you're doing that or whatever. Right? Everybody starts getting slow into it. Then all of a sudden you kind of have them go up and down emotionally. You're doing all these different things. You're trying to get them to be on board. Next thing you know, you get to where the crowd start raising and they can't take it anymore. And you're not supposed to go too far. You go too far, you go too long. You can't get the pop. You can't get them to come. So what do? You get to everything's there. And then when the crowd's at its highest point, that's when you get the 1, 2, 3, and the crowd pops. They roar. You gave them what they wanted. One person leaves and the other person is there, the residue. It's like they legit named the stuff after it. And we were children, had no idea that's what was going on. This is how they get you to cheer. This is their mindset. Why are they speaking in that mindset? People say it's important to the words that you speak, but you point that out and somebody says, oh, you're making too much of that. You said, did I know rapper Azealia Banks was trafficked by a major WWE exec? I didn't know that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Like I said about The Rock grew up in that culture. There's a guy, I can't remember his name now. Somebody might, if you're really into wrestling, you would know the guy I'm talking about. White guy, I think it's Pat Peterson or something like that. I believe it's Pat Peterson. If you've ever heard of that person, if you know wrestling from what they call the Attitude Era, so basically the era when Stone Cold and all of them were starting to pop. I don't even want to use the term now. When they were starting to get going or whatever. There's a guy named Pat Patterson. He would actually come with Vince McMahon and this other guy, these two old guys that would be next to Vince McMahon, who were always being made fun of and stuff, right? But if you know about Pat Patterson, he was actually a big time wrestler in his day. He's a big reason why a lot of stuff came to be in the Royal Rumble and stuff. He came up with that, a lot of stuff, and he would tell people a lot of the finishes. They even call it, by the way, finishes. When somebody pops, when the crowd's supposed to come, they call it finishes. That's the finish of the match. So if you ever hear a wrestler talking to another wrestler and they're talking and they're trying to figure out how the match is going to end, how the crowd is going to pop, they say to each other, what's going to be the finish? Now, pornea in porn, what is the finish? Finish is a what? A money shot. All right, I'll leave that there. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. How you doing, Sister Beverly? Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. So I'll leave that there. Right? Yeah, you beat him with the signature move, and that's gonna be the finish. Right? That's gonna be the finish. Right? So this stuff is there. No clothes on, buck naked, basically. Some of them even play to get booze from you because it's not supposed to be homosexual. Even though it is homosexual, but they'll even try to get you to boo homosexual. So what do? People like Gold Dust, before him, what was it? Pretty something, or I forget what the guy's name is, from like the 40s, the 50s, Pretty something or whatever. Even Ric Flair, whenever somebody's supposed to be a bad guy and the bad guy wins, you don't like it because the bad guy is supposed to be the guy who's not straight. So when the non-straight guy covers the guy who's straight, then that means basically something has happened. They're putting this stuff in on you, right? The heels, they'll even wear pink colors. They're trying to get you to think sexually. Pink is bad. Men don't wear pink, therefore sex is bad. But you're a child, Gorgeous George. Thank you, Gorgeous George. Not the one that was the girl that Macho Man marries, which, by the way, that's interesting. He would marry a girl and her wrestling name would be George. But when you're a bad guy, Gorgeous George. When you're a bad guy, what's his name? Who was the guy? Who's the guy that Hulk Hogan got his mannerism from and his poses and being strong and even saying, "Let me tell you something, brother." Can't remember his name right now, but he would wear tie-dye colors and stuff like that. Then later on, what's his face would do it too. Jesse the Body Ventura. He would do that. Bret Hart, with the pink and black. And a lot of people didn't like him even when he was doing well. And then when he became a heel, it was all the way. He was pink. Macho Man Randy Savage, he would wear all those colors and tie-dye, eventually doing the same thing, had the glasses, right? The reason he did that is because he was supposed to be a heel. And heels are supposed to be sexually deviant. You're not supposed to have that kind of sex. You're supposed to have this kind of sex. Like, they did that for us as children. And they still doing the same thing today. Now they just outright come out, Ultimate Warrior, right? He's supposed to be this strong, but right? Like think about it. The same Vince McMahon that started WWE, he also had something else. I forget what he called it, but he was trying to also make like a body WF or something like that, like a BWF or something, where he was bodybuilding. Because bodybuilding is when guys get off at looking at other men that are strong. Like as a guy, if I see a dude in the gym that look like he can lift 600 bench press, right? I just go, wow, that dude's strong. And I keep it moving. Right? I'm not trying to turn on the channel and watch guys pose against each other to see like which one's chest is popping out more. Like, real talk. Like, let's just break down the code. Right? Like that's not something I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to look at it. Was okay. Yeah, that's what it was. I don't even remember how to say ICO Pro or ICO Pro or whatever. That was the company he had when he was selling the products, right? But it was the thing was called like BWF or something like that. Yep. Oh, look at Brutus the Barber Beefcake, right? Or look at what's his face? By the way, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, one of his gimmicks, they call it gimmicks, when you either take drugs or gimmicks when you are acting like whatever your character is. One of his gimmicks he had in the WCW was the booty man, literally called the booty man. That he used to come to the ring, and all he would do, he couldn't dance either, but he'd do this really weird thing where he was gyrating the whole time, but it was supposed to be like him being a stripper. Or what about Val Venus? Some of y'all know about that name? See, I'm going into a place where some of y'all might not, this might not be your, anything you ever saw, but what about those who know Val Venus? You know Val Venus? Y'all remember Val Venus? And he used to say, hello, ladies, and that little thing or whatever. He was supposed to be a porn actor, right? What about, I'm trying to remember this dude. See, I could keep on going with it, right? But that's what it's supposed to be. Rick Rude. Rick Rude used to come. Matter of fact, remember Rick Rude had a thing and he fought against, I forget who it was he fought against, but he fought against somebody and he literally, he would actually tattoo. He would get somebody when he would have the big matches. He would get somebody to on his tights. They would like either spray paint or something, or they would draw or whatever. They would put the picture of the guy he was going to fight either on his crotch or on his behind. And he would do that whole thing. He would put it there. He had like the 6-pack, and he would put his thing, and he would do the whole thing like that. The gyration, y'all remember that? Like Rick Rude was a big one, right? And people were like, and I'm just telling you, like that's what they did. They put these people out in front. We don't even think about that. One time, but the same Rick Rude, I can't remember who it was he fought. One time, it was supposed to be him, and he was fighting against somebody. I think it was Ric Flair. Or it might not be Ric Flair. Maybe Ric Flair was the one that did it. I can't remember. But somebody fought somebody, and they literally part of the match that they were putting together. Part of the story is that they were trying to get you to believe that he might have slept with the person's wife, and so literally, the wrestler who was supposed to have possibly slept with somebody else's wife, they spray painted the wife on his crotch for the match. Like they do, and we say, oh, we didn't think like that, children. Yeah, we didn't, but they were governing your thoughts. It was porneia, that pornography. Pornography, once again, doesn't just mean that you're seeing. It's a false image concerning marriage. Once again, what is marriage? Marriage is sex. Sex is marriage. It was Rick Rude and the Macho Man. Yeah, okay, Miss Elizabeth. Yep. See, they did the same thing. I'm just trying to tell you. See, the code for children. This thing is coded. This thing is dastardly. They do this on purpose with regularity. No sincerity, with regularity. No sincerity, but regularity. You got to realize it. I don't know about the Bruno and Andre one before events. I'd have to see that one. You have to, if you can, send me the link. I'd love to. Well, I wouldn't love to watch it, I guess, if it's nasty, but I mean, I wouldn't mind at least studying it. Maybe I'll look up some stuff on it. Yeah, we taking it back, but I'm just trying to tell you. See, nowadays, if you watch what's the new one? They got WWE now, and what's their main competition? I know you got like Japan and New Japan and all the other stuff. I'm talking about in the States. What's the other major competition they have where? Is it CM Punk was in it? I don't watch it, but I still pay attention because I still want to know what's going on if I run into some of the stuff. But whatever the new one's called, that the owner of the Carolina Panthers' son is over. Not NXT. NXT is part of WWE, but something else. TNA exists. By the way, what does TNA stand for? They told you it stood for Total Nonstop Action. But TNA stands for, forgive me, right? Well, I won't say it, but TNA stands for tits and you know what. It's not WCW 2.0, even though it kind of sort of is, but it's something I can't remember what it is. They got whatever the new one is. Whatever the new one is, right? Billy Graham was the one I was thinking about earlier, where he got his stuff from. Yeah. But what is the new one? It's not TNA. I don't know. It's a new one under the Khan family. Whatever that new one is. Not ECW. ECW been gone for a long time. It's not Total Impact. That's basically the new version of TNA. It's something. But anyways, they have superstars in there now that straight up have just come out. And I don't mean come out, but they act like men. One of them does. I'm talking about there's a black dude on there. And Sonny Kiss, I think is his name. AEW. Thank you. AEW, All Elite Wrestling. And his name is Sonny Kiss. And when you see him dressed and you see the moves that he does, all the moves are there to be able to make you go like, wow, that's wild. Like all the moves and stuff where he might jump on your shoulders and put his legs around you and put his hand around your head or something crazy like that. All his moves and stuff like that. And it used to be you booed for him, but now what do? You cheer for him. They flipped it on you. The same people that grew up with wrestling, and now people told them, hey, like you guys are so anti-LGBTQ plus. Now we want to just straight up see men having sex with men in the ring. Don't even disguise it anymore. Don't even make it where we're gonna play mercy with each other, where you bending them wrist, where somebody gonna go to their knees in front of your crotch. Now let's just straight up put the crotch in their face. And people say I'm wrong for bringing it up. Once again, I don't have a heaven or hell to put nobody in. This is not an attack on LGBTQ plus stuff. What I'm telling you is that why is it okay to condition a child for something that they're not even physically ready to handle yet, let alone spiritually, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, etc. Why is it okay to condition a child like that? Why did they tell us it was okay? Why did we ever think it was okay to watch butt naked? I mean, pretty much, let's just call it what it is. Because if you're wearing tights, we still seeing just about everything on you. And if you're wearing just nothing but little underwear, because that's what it is, you can call it, my shorts. But they weren't wearing shorts. They were wearing either underwear or they were wearing stuff. And then they had boots on. That sounded like stripper gear to me. Real talk. Like if you went to a strip club, what would you see? Depending on where you are in the States, you either see them buck naked or you see it with a little strip here, right? And they basically would show you everything except what they're not allowed to show here. And then what did they, unless you got a private dance in the back or something crazy like that, and then they'd have some boots on. And that's what they're doing in wrestling. Same thing. And we thought it was okay to bring our children to this. Yeah, Batman and Robin. They used to have, matter of fact, Batman and Robin, they used to have on Saturday Night Live, right? They used to call, instead of calling them Batman and Robin, they called them what? The ambiguously gay duo. They told you, like, we know what we're doing out here. And your children can't wait to go to WrestleMania. I used to think to myself, man, one of these days it'd be really nice if I bring my son to WrestleMania. And they're like, wait a minute, no, this is gay as I don't know what. And then I'm gonna be around a bunch of dudes that are getting off on watching a bunch of dudes do this. Shoot, we let, we let Solomon watch certain things, but even certain like SpongeBob episodes. Like I used to laugh at it and stuff like that. I never really grew up with SpongeBob, but I was kind of young enough to laugh at it and stuff like that. Like, but you go watch the SpongeBob movie, and Patrick is in there dancing to SpongeBob, doing the whole "I'm a Goofy Goober" rock thing. If y'all heard that song, right? It's a song that you want, like, it's a banger. So you're like, oh, this song is nice. But then you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, is Patrick Star in fishnets the whole time dancing and doing splits and stuff? And are there episodes of SpongeBob where Patrick and SpongeBob are literally yelling about what's better, yellow or pink, and then all of a sudden they find out the other person is wearing their color in underwear, and they walk away holding hands, thankful that the person would wear their color around their crotch. SpongeBob, people talk about grooming. SpongeBob is the ultimate groomer because they got you in on stuff that wasn't even about that. The next thing you know, wait a minute, like where this, and you would just laugh a little bit, like, oh, okay, I guess, like they don't really do that. But then you start seeing it over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah, he had the heels. Patrick had the heels on and everything. See, now it's like you got to watch before your children can watch. I got to watch this stuff, and a lot of stuff as I'm watching, I'm like, I wouldn't even want to watch this myself. Why would my child watch this? The code for children. See, what is our code? If you don't have a code, if you don't have a vision, somebody got one for you. That latest Joker movie, the Joker gets pregnant and has a baby. They are intentionally. I didn't even know that. I did not even know that. Haven't seen that. And said they were a couple on the episode, and SpongeBob would stay at home. Oh yeah, I think I've seen that one. At least I saw the beginning of it. I actually turned it off. I think I know what you're talking about. If it's the same one I'm thinking about, because I turned it off. I was like, I gotta get this off the screen. You said Robin was known as the boy wonder. Matter of fact, you know how well, hold on, let me just read this next comment. Sorry, on the way. He said, isn't the tell live visions, yeah, isn't the problem to confuse and delude, get them young and take their history so they don't know where they are going? Touch game. You grew up on Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes got some wild stuff too. How many times did Bugs Bunny kiss Elmer Fudd? Right? How many times did Daffy Duck kiss Elmer Fudd? Or how many times did they kiss Yosemite Sam? And when Elmer would get kissed by a guy dressed like a girl, he would blush. I mean, the children code is wild. You said he's a rabbit, who cares? But that's bestiality. I would care even more. I would care even more. Why are you okay with your children watching rabbits kiss human beings? Why are you defending it? I would care even more. I don't want my son, I don't want my daughter, I don't want anybody in SOC's children sitting up there watching that. Why would you care? Why would you not care about that? Not only is it cross-dressing, but the cross-dressing rabbit. You said a cartoon and no one takes it seriously for that reason. Yeah, you don't take it seriously. You don't take it seriously when people get shot in cartoons. You don't take it seriously when people bleed in cartoons. They bleed more in cartoons than they do in PG-13 movies. You don't take it seriously when people, I don't know, have cartoons where they say like, hey, you should learn law because I'm just a bill. I'm just a bill and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. You don't take it seriously when people have cartoons where they call people out of their names and you think it's okay to do so. You don't take it seriously. Yeah, in Looney Tunes. In Looney Tunes, why do they wear white gloves in Looney Tunes? Let me ask you a question. Do you know why they wear white gloves in Looney Tunes? You said who bleeds in Looney Tunes? Well, may I be honest with you? In Looney Tunes, yeah. Are your children watching only Looney Tunes, by the way? Are they watching stuff like Batman? Are they watching stuff like Spider-Man? Are they watching even stuff like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where you can cut somebody as long as you don't show red blood, so they can have, like blue stuff coming out of machines, but as long as you don't call it blood. But the reason why they wear white gloves on Looney Tunes is because that was something that you did to slaves or people that were slave class. They weren't supposed, black hands were not supposed to touch white things. So Bugs Bunny is originally like supposed to be representative of a black person. Elmer Fudd was originally a black person. Certain people, they wore white gloves. Mickey Mouse, black, wears white gloves. Minnie Mouse, black, wears white gloves. Goofy, black, wears white gloves. Donald Duck, white, doesn't wear white gloves. And if you say, well, he's got feathers, not hands. Well, I mean, they draw fingers and stuff and he grabs up with hands. But okay, if we're going to go there, he has feathers, not hands. Okay, well, mice have paws. They don't need gloves on, right? Dogs have paws. They don't need gloves on, right? So, yeah, they infiltrate the stuff. By the way, so you don't know the power of cartoons. Go to other countries, even countries that you think are supposed to be greater than other countries, not third world. Go to Belgium. And when you watch cartoons in Belgium, they're still showing those same cartoons, but they show the actual ones that you're not aware used to go hand in hand, play at the same time, play right behind the Looney Tune ones. You think that it's just Looney Tunes by itself, or the ones that they let you watch. But they'll let you watch the ones over there that they used to watch. And you see the episodes where there'll be a black boy and he's dirty. So then you put the black boy in water, he comes out and he's clean for a little bit, but slowly but surely the black comes back on his skin. You'll see the black boy who's hunted by all the white people around because there's a white girl that keeps being mischievous, and the black boy is so mad and angry at the white girl, but then the white girl gives him a kiss, and as everybody's mad about it, he's happy. He's happy that he can go ahead and be beaten because at least the white girl thinks that he has image, about himself. But you don't know those things. You speak out of ignorance. You complain out of ignorance. It's easy to complain out of ignorance, but read a book, study. Watch some of the stuff that's still on YouTube, by the way. You can watch it for yourself, where people say the racism and stuff. Watch the stuff where they literally had stuff. I used to have pictures of it on here. I don't have it right now, but they literally have videos where African Americans go back to Africa. They're supposed to be these people with those big teeth, big teeth and big lips, and or only have a couple teeth, rather, big lips. They talk like this, show boss, and they sitting there in the cave, and you just see their eyes and their lips, and they say, "Please tell me you's the one to touch me. Please, I swear, tell me you's the one to touch me." And the person, "I wasn't the one that touched you." And they said, "Well, if you ain't touched me, well, who did?" And then all of a sudden these lights come on, and they show some Africans that are there. And the Africans scare the African Americans, and they run away, and the African Americans start trying to shoot them with spears so that they should be afraid of themselves. Now, if you're a black person who's already told you ain't nothing at that time, and you're watching that, how do you think that makes you feel? If you're a white person watching it at that time, how do you think that makes you feel about black people? And then if you become a person who identifies with that as a child, what do you become as an adult? So you can say whatever you want, that it doesn't do anything to anybody, but you just don't even comprehend psychology at that point, or you're trying to cape up for something that you want to remain perverted, wicked, and corrupt. So thank you for being on. Looks like you might have been muted, but thank you for being on. But obviously, you just don't care enough. You're oblivious to it. It's not your concern. Looney Tunes character do harm to each other. Maybe why children don't understand cause and effect, for sure. By the way, I meant to say this earlier before the person would take it to the other place. It's actually worse when they don't show the blood. Like, I'd rather the child, if anything, this is going to sound wild. I don't think they should watch either, but I'd rather, if I had my choice, it's just my personal choice. And thank you for the love. Appreciate it. If I had my personal choice, right? If I had my personal choice, yeah, like that makes it right or not, right? But if I had my personal choice, I'd rather the child see rated R and see the blood and the guts and the gore and everything, because see, a lot of children are growing up with PG-13, where you can show the violence, but just don't show the blood. Like, they're watching stuff where they see arms be disconnected from people, but there's no blood. So in their mind, there's no consequence. They're watching stuff like in the MCU universe, right? Or the MCU, the Marvel Comics universe. In there, they're seeing people that die but always get to come back to life somehow. Only one person really never came back to life. That's what's her face. At least one person on the side of good or whatever. Natasha, the Black Widow. She's the only one. Everybody else, pretty much, if they die, you gonna come back. So they don't even have a mindset of, wait a minute, if I'm in this stuff, if I'm going to war, if I'm trying to shoot at people, if I'm being shot at, there's a possibility I don't come back. See, they're being conditioned. They're being conditioned, like those minstrel shows conditioned. Yeah, they get desensitized. That's the danger of it. See, as somebody who's gone and seen people get shot before and been in battle, like, yeah, like it's not what you think it is. It's not cool. Even if I play like guns and stuff with my son on his level with his guns, or even with our hands, his gun, if he's not using it, it's always got to be pointed down at the ground, because I don't even want him in play. I don't even want him to make the mistake of ever thinking. And thanks for being part of the community, Derek. I don't want him to ever make the mistake of ever thinking that your gun is just something that you can randomly have. You can't pull your gun for no reason. That's the reason why people get messed up now. Like, see, and let's be honest. See, in this country that you're in, for a lot of you are on the United States corporation right now. So in the country or the corporation that you're really in, you got to recognize that because of the color of your skin, it's going to verify whether you mean something righteous or you mean something that's evil to them. So that's why you can have a little boy who's playing with a fake gun. It's clear he's playing with a fake gun, and children are laughing and playing, and somebody calls the police on him because they don't like the fact that this black boy has something, because any black boy, even if he has something that's fake, it'll be thought of as something that's negative. And next thing you know, the police come and they don't even ask questions. They don't do what they do for white men who are coming at them with knives and guns and shooting and stuff like that, and tell them, please sit down on the ground and this and that, and look at heroes because they didn't shoot him. No, they shot the little boy because he was playing. You can't even play around in this country. That's why you got to have your own environment. You can't even play around with it in this country. You talking about why does it matter? It matters because my people can't play. The only way my child can play is he has to be in an environment to where he's protected. I can't just take my child to the playground without other people already looking down upon him because of the way he looks. So I got to make sure the environment, if I'm with him in the environment, I got to watch over him like a hawk. Sometimes, because people won't even play with him, I'll have to just, depending on where we are, I have to make sure that, okay, let's go over here. Let's go ahead and fight. And let's go ahead and do this or whatever, because he got to be in an environment to where it's okay for him to be himself. See, the person who comes on here saying all that stuff doesn't even think about those things. It's not part of their process. They don't even process that in parenting. They don't even process that in parenting. You said you're asking the question of where the theory comes from, and you're getting all this defensive stuff. I didn't even see your initial questions. But if you're talking about people on here or whatever, like, what's your question? What's your question? Since everybody just getting on you for no reason, what's your question? If you don't mind, we'll stop everything. What's to make sure that we're being fair or whatever we need to be. What's your question, if you don't mind? Is it Ryan? I would believe the white glove thing, but did anyone actually admit anywhere that's the reason? Yeah. We know that that's the reason that they did it in churches where black and white people came together. The overseers said, yes, they did it. George Washington has proof and evidence that they did it on his manor. Right? What is that called? Mount Vernon. Thomas Jefferson, more than likely, we don't know 100% for sure there, but Thomas Jefferson more than likely did it over in Monticello. Those are both Virginia slave owners, by the way. So if you want to say it's a Virginian thing, but more than likely, it's something that happened quite often. And the fact that they keep having people who wear white gloves, because not only when you talk about Looney Tunes and all these other people, also look at the fact that when they're blown up, when their face is blown up, what do they look like? In Looney Tunes, if somebody is an explosion, what happens? They get blackface. They have white gloves on. They have blackface on. They get these red lips, the watermelon lips and everything, and their teeth aren't there, or they only have a few teeth. So but to teach their own. I'm not asking for anybody to have to agree with it. I'm just giving you context of something that maybe you've never heard, or maybe you've never seen, or maybe it's something you've never researched. At the end of the day, it's like when people and here's my deal. Even if people try to argue, well, it's everything you're saying, I don't believe it, I don't agree with it, this and that. It's like when people do the Willie Lynch thing. Now the new thing since the '80s, so still new, right? Relatively speaking, is Willie Lynch letter never existed. Problem with that is that okay, even if you want to say it never existed, does the Willie Lynch letter teach you something about your people and what they did? Did they in fact use colorism? Actually, he said age, right? Age was first, and he only said it first because it started with the letter A. But then they use age and colorism and male against female and old against young and which plantation we're from and what size plantation was from and all that stuff. Did they not use it? Therefore, even if you believe it not to be real, is it something you should glean from? Right. And also too, even when we talk about science on any level, even when we deal with science is talking about something to where you have to recognize too, even when you're talking about science, science is something that could even because I'll always be somebody, well, if you're talking about scientific method and stuff, aren't you supposed to make sure you have hypothesis and you have actual controls and you make sure you go through an actual experiment and you can actually see it? But then they'll say, well, no, science can be observational. Okay, well, I'm making observations. you know You said your question, was it meant to be overt or subliminal? The whole colorism thing, it's overt and covert. Nowadays it's probably more covert, even though some people will tell you straight to your face. But it was always both at the same time. Like just think about it like this. What's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican? One is overt, one is covert. I actually prefer the one that's overt. I prefer to talk to the Republican. I'm not either one. Right? Because both of them are two sides of the same bird, right? Two wings on the same bird, two sides to the same coin, etc. But I prefer to talk to the overt, right? Malcolm X, I believe, is one that said, if a dog is barking at you, right, and he growl, or if a dog growls at you, and the dog smiles at you, but both of them bite you, it's like either way, there's still a dog that's going to bite you, right? One just because one that does it with a growl, right, does it with one that's or one does it with a smile doesn't mean they're both not going to bite you. At the end of the day, though, like I'd rather see the one that growls to tell me that he's coming rather than the one that wants me to pet it on the head and then bites me. So these are things that are just there. But once again, the code for our children. Our children don't get taught this because once again we're arguing over, is it overt, is it covert, is it real, is it not? Tell me about the result. Because if you're saying everything I'm saying is wrong, cool. Tell me about the result and what you're saying is real, and tell me how we're going to connect to the system that doesn't want you and how it's going to show itself to be real or better for you all of a sudden. How you doing, babe? You said it's overt and covert, public lynchings in broad daylight and affirmative action. By the way, even affirmative action, when they say that, right? Affirmative action, it actually helped more white women than it did anybody else. But white women would be the first people to talk against affirmative action. You got to ask yourself what's going on there, right? Like we know that affirmative action, right? We know stuff like the blood quantum. There's more white people by only on the social construct on welfare, but our children once again are being taught. So see, the adults who are arguing are once the children who were busy being taught by whatever life experience or by their parents or whatever. Like I get it, right? But they were the ones being taught that what we're saying has no place, is wrong. So what do we think about the 1099-C or straw man? We talk about that all the time. Like, not only that, we talk more so about just making sure that you get your W-8 BEN, but first making sure that you're a non-citizen national with your passport. Get your DS-11 done, and if you know how to do it correctly, you get updated in the system. Once you're updated in the system, you're able to go ahead and say, hey, look, like I'm not part of that system anymore. I'm a non-citizen national. But then not only do you need it on paper, you need to live it, because if you don't live it, then you still can be stripped of anything they want to strip you of. Because if you're still gonna, like, if you get your 1099-C done, or if you should never really authenticate your birth certificate, because your birth certificate doesn't need to be authenticated. To authenticate it is you saying that your birth certificate should become authentically what they say it is. Your birth certificate is something saying that you were a bond, you were a slave, and you're a stock, and around you is a bond. Right? You're bonded to this wicked fake corporation. 28 USC 300215A, saying that you're a non-citizen. Saying that you are in fact part of a corporation. Right. So that's why we even teach, starting next week, that's one of the classes that we're going to be teaching. But that's why we even teach sovereignty. A lot of people have no clue how to come out of it. And even if you never change your paperwork, if you live sovereign, you can always make sure, I'm not going to pay for that. I'm not going to pay this. I'm not in debt to the country. That's your debt, not mine. They say, well, it's everybody's debt. No, it's not everybody's debt, because I'm not part of what everybody does. It can't be everybody's debt if I'm not part of what everybody does. Right? You can only be in debt for what you did. But when you take on debt that's not yours, you become a slave. That's all a slave is. A slave is somebody that's in debt. If you had to be a slave for life, that means you had to be in debt for life, right? If you were in debt for life, you had to be a slave for life. That's how it works. If you're in debt for $20,000, then you're a $20,000 slave. If you're in debt for $15 million, then you're a $15 million slave. If you're in debt for $1 billion, you're a $1 billion slave. If you're in debt for $31 trillion, then you're a $31 trillion slave. Yeah, laws of the land, if you want to be part of the corporation, then yeah, you can still be property. You are property. You're part of the corporation. The corporation does an owner. What's the definition of capitalist? See, this is stuff we don't teach our children. See what I'm saying? Train them up in the way that they should grow. So when they grow old, they won't depart from it. They don't have an environment to learn this in. We're going to talk about this more this evening, but our children are more concerned with being savage than they are about being sovereign. That's a word. I felt that, right? Like, our children today are more concerned with being savage than being sovereign. I'm a savage, I'm bougie, I'm ratchet, and then they tell you we need to change the definitions of it so we can call it ourselves ratchet, because ratchet should mean something different to us. That's why you call yourself the N-word still. Thank you for the love, appreciate it. But our children are more concerned with being savage than they are with being sovereign. Sauvage en français, right, is literally saying that you are wild. That means you don't fit into their version of civilization. But you're supposed to, if you want to be a savage, fine, be a savage by being a sovereign, because then you don't fit into their society. Wow, thank you for the love. I've never seen that one. The whole unicorn, never seen that one. Thank you. Right? But they want you to be what? They want you to be savage, not sovereign. No sovereignty over here, only savagery. No loving each other over here, only savagery. No kingdom mind over here. Why is it that your child can quote, and thank you, always blessed, appreciate it, awesome. Thank you for the love, appreciate y'all. Yeah, they scapegoat that. Really, they technically make us the sacrificial lamb, because scapegoat means they get to be let go. But basically, yeah, they make us the scapegoat, so to speak. What if we are housing, urban development, living? Can we still be sovereign? Yeah, it's going to be a little more difficult, but you can work towards sovereignty, and the goal is to always work towards it. Like, just because I am able to be in places that are disconnected from the system doesn't mean that if I don't make the wrong move, I can still not be sovereign. So there's ways to work towards it. But yeah, right now it might be more difficult for you to become sovereign, but there's still steps you can take, most definitely. And that's why it has to be communal. We have to come together at some point. We got to pour into a pot. That's why it says stuff. See, you got to teach your children, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there might be meat in mine house. There's got to be a place of storage for us. Where are we storing our food? Where are we storing our seeds at? Where are we storing our love at? Where are we storing our laws at? Where are we storing our teachings at? Right? Like you don't have an environment. Once again, the precept is going to be what teaches the child the sept, the idea. The environment precept is going to teach the child the sept, the idea that's going to allow them to grow up and become a concept, them to be one with the idea that they might teach it to the next generation. The first disconnection starts here. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim. And when he says therefore, allow me to do the Roman road real quick for you. I'm going to be real quick, right? We have a whole series, or not a series, but we have a few videos on here called the Roman road, right? So if you want to go and look at that series, you can go back on there from time to time. We go and we update it at some point soon. We'll probably update it in the beginning of this year once we come out of this series, right? But there we have a whole thing called the Roman road. Watch this. The Roman road goes like this. Why was Romans written? It's called the Christology. That's the study of Christ, or the study of Yeshua HaMashiach, right? So Romans chapter 1, verse 11, what does it say? It says that this was written that you would be established. We stopped being established because we got away from law. So now we got to get back to law. So this is written so that we might be reestablished, technically, but established. Romans chapter 1, verse 11. Romans chapter 3. It will tell you about Israel and the importance of Israel, but Romans chapter 3, verse 23 specifically will say that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of Elohim, right? The imprint, the weight, the heaviness, the magnitude of what Elohim wants for us. Thank you, always blessed, right? Then after that, Romans chapter 5, verse 8. That Yahshua demonstrated his love to us, that while we were out there and yet sinners, he died for us. Therefore, in Romans 6:22, we are now free. Why? Because Romans 6:23, the wages of sin was death, but the gift that Elohim has gave us through the sacrifice is eternal life. Keep with me now, though. Romans chapter 8, verse 1. So that you are now therefore not under condemnation. Why? Because you're not in their system. You don't follow after the flesh, but you follow after the spirit. And what Romans 8:11, the same spirit that rose Yahshua from the dead dwells within you and will quicken your mortal body. So you're not even on the mortality thing. You're thinking about immortality. So Romans chapter 8, verse 18, the suffering of the present time in this mortality is not worthy to be compared to the glory which shall be revealed in immortality. What shall be revealed in us happens in Romans chapter 8, verse 19, that the creature, those created, are waiting on the manifestation of the sons of Elohim. When we become who we're supposed to be in the law as family, as community, he's going to be able to take us where we're supposed to be. So now Romans chapter 8, verse 28 comes into play, that all things are working together for our benefit because we are doing things according to his purpose, and we are called according to his purpose, invited to do so, and we love him, achaba him. We do the actions that he wants us to do. Now, Romans chapter 8, verse 37, we don't think like the conquerors think because we're more than conquerors. So, but don't get it twisted. Romans chapter 9, verse 6, not all Israel is Israel. So just because they're your skin color, not all skin folk is kinfolk. Not all Israel is Israel, right? So don't get it twisted, right? But at the same time, Romans chapter 10, verse 1, Paul says, it's still my prayer that Israel would be saved. Romans chapter 10, verse 2, it says, so Romans chapter 10, verse 1, still my prayer, Israel will be saved. Romans 10, 2, Israel, we have a zeal for Elohim, but it's not according to knowledge. It's not according to be intimate with what we're supposed to do. So Romans chapter 10, verse 3, therefore, we have this issue going on to where what? To where we got involved with everybody else's version of law, and now we lost. So Romans chapter 10, verse 4, the law that was built for us doesn't even have any effect the way it used to. But Romans 10, 5, if we believe in who Moses believed in, the Elohim that he did, we need to get back to him. Romans chapter 10, verse 6 and 7, this is not about telling you who's going to heaven to hell, because I don't have no heaven to hell to put you in. But Romans chapter 10, verse 7 is telling you specifically, Romans chapter 10, verse 8 is telling you specifically, get back to this law. That's how Romans chapter 10, verse 9, if you would confess Yahshua HaMashiach Adon, and therefore believe that Elohim raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. It's saying that you should confess. The word confession literally means to have the same logic. It confess. That's like concept is to be one with the scepter, the idea. Confess is to be one with what has been said, to be one with what has been done, to say what has been said, to say what has been done, or homologio, which means to have the same logic. So you have to have the same logic of law that Yahshua HaMashiach had, that he talked about in Matthew chapter 5, verse 10 through 12, Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 through 20, and Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. So now you have that same logic. If you confess that, if you live by that, then you can also be a fellow heir to what he is, which is now you can believe that Elohim raised him from the dead, because if he raised him from the dead and you have that same logic, then he can raise you from the dead. In Romans chapter 10, verse 10, right behind it says, don't get stuck on just being saved, though, because once you get saved, you're on your way to salvation and on your way to righteousness. Righteousness meaning right lawful standing, and salvation meaning you got to be salvaged. So you've never been at your best or at your greatest, but you got to be salvaged. Now we get from there to Romans chapter 10, verse 11 and 12. It even makes it a point to say, hey, but don't get it twisted. Even the Greek can get in on this. Even the person who's a non-believer can, if they become believers and they follow the truth. Because remember, Romans 9:6 told us that not even all Israel is Israel. Not all of us are following this righteousness, this right lawful standard, this right legal standing, right? However, don't get it twisted. Romans 10:13-16 says what? Therefore, anyone who calls upon the name, the Shem, which a lot of people have his name in vain because you don't even know what it is. But anyone who calls upon the proper name of the Lord, they shall be what? Saved. But how can one be saved if you don't believe it? And how can you believe it if you haven't heard this? And how can you hear it if you haven't, how can you believe it if you haven't heard it? And how can you hear it if it's not being preached? And how can it be preached if the preachers aren't sent by the Most High? Because how beautiful are the feet of those who walk in the way, walk in the path of the Most High. They have the same logic. They confess the same logic of Yahshua. Therefore, Romans chapter 10, verse 16, who shall believe our report? Can anybody hear it? Can anybody hear it out here? And don't forget Romans chapter 11. It then goes on to tell you that, hey, don't get it twisted, y'all. Don't get it twisted, children. We should be teaching you this, children, babies. Don't get it twisted. Romans chapter 11, it says specifically what? That we have to ensure that we are, Romans chapter 11, we have to ensure that we don't get rid of Israel. That's Balaam doctrine, Nicolaitan doctrine. You're warned about that. Revelation chapter 2 and verse 15. Don't be about Balaam doctrine, was a doctrine specifically made to try and get Israel to disobey the law so that Yahweh would not protect us. And Nicolaitan doctrine literally means Nikos laity. Nikos is conquer, laity is lay people. So when you go to your church and they say you the lay people and they preach at you the way that they do, they're saying we deserve to conquer you by the words that we preach. That's exactly what they're doing. You're warned about it. So Revelation chapter 11 says, hey, don't throw away Israel. You know, don't say that Israel doesn't matter anymore. Yah forbid. But he says those who do worship, you can still come in and be grafted into this tree that's rooted and grounded. Just because you're not the apple tree and you got grafted from an orange tree, if you're grafted successfully and you connect with the family, well, then guess what? You yourself are now deeply rooted in whatever we get. So now Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2 that I started off with to tell you how we got to get there to get out of this mindset. I beseech you, therefore, brethren. How you doing, Bradley? I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of Elohim. After all that, I beseech you, therefore. Therefore means what? Because of all that we just talked about. Romans 1:11, Romans 3:23, Romans 5:8, Romans 6:22, Romans 6:23, Romans 8:1, Romans 8:11, Romans 8:18, Romans 8:19, Romans 8:28, Romans 8:37, Romans 9:6, Romans 10:1 through 16, and now we get to and then Romans chapter 11, and now we get to Romans 12:1 and 2. Because of all that stuff we just talked about, children. Because now we're not just talking about physical children, but spiritual children. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, children of the Most High, spiritual children, even for those who would consider them to be such. I beseech you, therefore, by the mercies of Elohim, that you present yourselves a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable, holistic and acceptable, which is your reasonable service. And how is this going to happen? And you do this by the daily renewing of your mind, right? Be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed. Not conform. Don't go one with any kind of form, but be transformed. You have to go from being the human being that you are through salvation, through a salvaging process. You're not going to be the same. You've never been this version of yourself before, and you'll never be it again. You've never been this great before. You've never been this determined before. You've never had this mindset before. You've never raised your babies like this before. You were never raised like this before. You never heard some of this conversation before. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Where's your mind at? Well, what happens when you die is based upon what you did when you live. Seek first the kingdom of Elohim and all his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto thee. Is there heaven or hell? Yes. Are the streets going to be paved with gold in heaven? Yes. Can you rule in heavenly places with the Messiah? Yes. Right? Are you deserving and worthy of heaven? Yes. The kingdom of heaven can even live inside you. You don't even have to wait to die to experience that. If the kingdom of heaven is in here when you die, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Oh, I've never seen Holy Spirit. I never even got that before. I'm sorry. Give me a second. Hallelujah. I never even seen that before. I never even seen that before. Praise Yah for that. Wow. Yes, if the kingdom of heaven is in me on here, and to be absent from the body, be present for the Lord, why am I even in doubt of where I'm going? Oh, my greatness. Woo! That's a word, right? I've never even, Holy Spirit, she brought that out of nowhere. Praise God for you. I thank you, Holy Spirit. I never even seen that. That messed me up a little bit, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm going to allow on that. Hold on a second. Let me get myself together. I never even got that before. Wow. 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 To be absent from the body, be present from the Lord. And the kingdom of heaven is attached to my soul and my spirit that I already know where I'm going. Right? So, babe, I said, I don't even know if I can repeat it. It just came out of nowhere. Yeah, okay. So basically, if the kingdom of heaven is in me, right? To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Once this body falls off and I'm waiting for the glorified body, then that means what? The kingdom of heaven that's absent from the body, but is attached to me, it's gonna go right back with me to where I've always been. I'm just going back to where I've always been. Oh my greatness. I've never even seen that before. To be absent from the body, be present with the Lord, the kingdom of heaven is inside me. It's gotta go back. It's gotta go back. That's a word right there. It's gotta go back. I never even got that before. Praise God. Wow. I wasn't ready for that, y'all. That's you ever been speaking to somebody and the Holy Spirit give you something you wasn't ready for? Like, that's what it is. He's one of these moments right here. I'm trying to figure out how to keep on going. Right? But praise God. See, this is stuff we gotta get we gotta give this to the babies. We gotta give this to the babies. And the prodigal son going back to the father, right? We gotta get this to the babies. I don't care if your baby's left. Be like the prodigal father and be sitting out there waiting for him to come back and already have the fatted calf and already have the ring and already have the robe and already be ready to just restore him. See, you ready for people to come back into this knowledge and they got to bow down to this, bow down to that. Yes, they got to learn the law. But we didn't say, but see, watch this. When the son came back into the house, the son was talking about just make me a servant. Just tell me what the laws are and this and that or whatever. See, I'm not saying they shouldn't obey the law, but when they come in, see, the Bible says when somebody comes back to the Most High, the angels are doing this. Hallelujah. Hover. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Barak Allah Sham Yahava. Barak Yahava. Barak Yahshua. Barak Ravak Hakudash. That's what they're doing. Right? But somebody comes into us and we're like, oh, okay, well, you can't do this until you obey the law. I'm not saying put them in positions of power or anything. I'm not saying make them leaders of your assemblies. They're supposed to have some time with that. But when they come in, stop talking down to them because they eating pork next to you. Just because they eating pork doesn't mean you have to eat the pork. Praise Yah for the fact they'll sit down with you and start saying, what must I do to be saved? If they can't ask the question, what must I do to be saved? Then they can't even get saved. Don't get mad at the question. Right? Get mad at the devil. Thank you for the love, right? And your children are about to start coming. They're flocking. They want to know the truth. You know what really started me down the path? If you want to really know what really started making me like start to even like write books like Jesus is, or does it really matter that Jesus was black and stuff like that? You want to know why I started doing things like that or started preaching this stuff in churches and realizing that, hey, I got to preach this even if I get kicked out churches or whatever. You know why I started coming on these lives and I do this every single day? You know why it is? It's because the babies, 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds who weren't getting this and were asking questions and then basically were told not to ask any more questions about this stuff. I saw their lives turn out wild. And these were going to be the people who you could see it. That was going to be the next preacher. That was going to be the next praise and worship leader. That girl, she would catch the Holy Ghost. Like for real. Like you couldn't doubt. Like they were laying hands on people as children and people were getting saved and healed and stuff. And they weren't even preaching yet. Like you were like, okay, that's going to be the next. And now I see him and I see him doing stuff that's wild. And I'm like, how did that baby turn? But I remember them asking me questions and they would call me in secret in confidence. They didn't want their parents to know that they were calling. Thank you for the love. Appreciate that. They didn't want their parents to know that they were calling me and asking me questions like, why don't they tell us that Jesus is black? That's why I wrote the book. Because they would ask questions. Why don't they tell us that Jesus is black? And I had to try and be nice about it and do this. And, it's because, and, if you just wait on it and blah, blah. And well, why don't they tell us that Jesus is black? Well, just, it's become like, and try to be nice about it, but they be like, but if he's black and if he's colored, if he's whatever we want to call him, and they won't tell us the truth about that, then how can we believe him about anything else? That's what they would tell me on the phone. 12-year-olds, the 13-year-olds, and then the old 14-year-old, and they would call, be arguing on the phone with one another about the word, asking me questions about the word. Well, besides just Jesus being black, I mean, why don't they teach us about the law? Because the law says this. Well, I was reading this, and the law actually says da da da, and had to give them they wanted direction. Nobody would tell them these things. The babies. It's like the Santa Claus thing. If you tell them that Santa Claus is real, if you tell them the Easter Bunny is real, if you tell them the Tooth Fairy is real, if you tell them whatever, you tell them Halloween is something that's there. You tell them that whatever holiday you're doing is real. And then they get to an age and they realize it's not. You done lied to them 3-4 times already. And it was major lies. At that point, they're like, I can't even, they might not even think, it might not be in the forefront of their mind, but in the annals of their mind, right, in the hallways, excuse me, doing that Luciferian type stuff. Sorry, my bad. In the hallways, in the passageways of their minds, in the depths of their mind, they've already decided, oh, you know what? Like, I can't trust them. How can I trust them? They lied to me about. How can I trust mama or daddy about what marriage is about? Why would I even come to them about marriage? I know they lie. We don't even think about that. It's decrepit. It's disgusting. How you doing, Eugene? Your child has been growing up. The code for children. Your child been growing up with the wildest of lies their whole life, and we allow it to happen. Go to school so you can go ahead and be somebody. And then you realize that in order to be somebody in your job, in your corporation, you must be nobody. If you can be nobody well enough, we'll pay you somewhat like you're somebody. We'll give you a small percentage of your value. See, people that make $500,000 in a corporation, I promise you, their value is worth way more than 500,000. If you can make the company 5 billion, they'll give you 500,000. That's how that works, right? Like you getting fractions out here, right? If you can make your company $1 million a year, right? $1 million McDonald's, a $2 million McDonald's, $1 million Firehouse, $1 million or $2 million Chick-fil-A, whatever it is. If you can make them this money over here, I promise you, they'll pay you a fraction. Oh man, yeah, we'll give you $15 an hour. I mean, I got a wife and children. Well, I mean, thank you. That's why we don't pay you $10. We pay you 15. You go, well, they make 10. I make 15. You just a $15 an hour slave now. Oh wow, praise Yah, Sister Betty, hallelujah. Right? And this is why we got to talk about the children code. See, watch this. You won't see how they've done this coded for your children till you realize how they've coded it for you. See, now that you realize they coded it for you, you can decode it. And you can have the Israelite code, one that they can't break. The goal is to not become a stumbling block. We can argue and argue and argue and argue and argue and argue all day long. We don't want to be stumbling blocks. Yeah, even NFL players make make millions for owners, or I'm sorry, make millions and owners make billions. Yeah, exactly. Right. And you get a coach. What is the coach supposed to do? What is the coach's job? You know what the coach's job is, y'all? You know what the coach's job is? The coach is supposed to be a father, to tell them that whatever boss says is okay. He's an overseer, basically, but he basically is supposed to be a father. And do you not know where they look for most of these children? I won't say all of these children that play football, but most of these children who play football, where do they come from? Fatherless homes. Where do the colleges go? The colleges go into fatherless homes. They call it recruiting. Right? But let me just explain to you what recruiting is. Maybe you don't know that they go into fatherless homes and they talk to these boys and they talk to these mamas and they make sure that they come in there and tell them, I'm gonna be a daddy to your little boy that's never had one, and I'm gonna oversee him, and I'm gonna make sure that he makes it to the big time, or I'm gonna make sure he gets a degree, or I'm gonna make sure that at least he come out a man, and they give him all these promises. Right? And then they take your boy, and the only thing they're trying to do in college is make sure that they ain't worried about them becoming better men. I mean, to a certain degree, but they don't got time for it. You think that a college coach who's getting paid $10 to $15 million himself has time to worry about whether your little boy is turned into a man? Or is he worried about making sure that he's disciplined in football? That he's disciplined in putting his body on the line in the gladiatorial sport? Didn't it just happen? Did we not just see this happen? Is his name Derek Hamlin or Darren Hamlin or whatever his name is, Buffalo Bills? Did we not just see this man have a heart attack on the field? had a strong heart, and still had a heart attack because all it took was one hit in the place. And they said, we've never seen this before. That's not true. You've seen somebody have cardiac arrest and not come back from it before. It happened in football. It happened in the 90s. You saw it happen in basketball. If you know your basketball, now you might not have seen it with your own eyes, but you heard about, now he was on drugs too, truth be told. But what about Len Bias, who was so great that they thought that was the only person that was going to rival Michael Jordan? Had Len Bias lived, it wouldn't have been Michael Jordan with 6 championships. It would have been Len Bias against Michael Jordan. And Len Bias was going to win before Michael because Len Bias got drafted by the Boston Celtics. Larry Bird said that Len Bias was so great that Larry Bird was, remember, Larry Bird had already kind of hurt his back. So he was basically, he didn't have much left in him. Basically after like 88, 89, he was still great through like maybe 91-ish, but he didn't really have much left in him. Right. But he was like, I'm gonna go ahead and shut it down. I'm gonna play a couple years, teach him how to win championships. And once I win another championship with him, Len Bias is gonna take over. This is gonna be his team. And then Len Bias had a heart attack, right? But they didn't care about that. They knew he was on drugs. In University of Maryland, they knew what he was doing. They knew that he wasn't on drugs before he came in, but nobody cared about him. I need you to see, like, these children who are listening right now, any child that's listening right now, I need you to comprehend, pay attention to your mother and your father, especially if you're giving you the word of Yah, or they're giving you what Yah is saying, or they're giving you what the Lord is saying. Pay attention to what they're saying, because what Yahweh has for you will last. What the world has for you is only temporary. You're watching all these things on YouTube. You're watching all these things in your movies. You're watching all these things that everybody's telling you, be like this and make this quick money and just have fun in the moment. When you become an adult, you're going to wish and hope, if you're not careful, you're going to wish and hope that you would listen to your parents to realize that they wanted to ensure that they were giving you something that would cause you to be great forever, not great for a second. Hear me when I say this, babies. The code for children is out there to mess you up. A lot of us have been messed up, and we've had to finally come back to ourselves to be able to enter into the kingdom. But I'm here to tell you, babies, even on your level, I don't care if you're 2, I don't care if you're 5, I don't care if you're 7, I don't care if you're 10, I don't care if you're 20, I don't care if you're a little boy right now trying to become a man, or a little girl trying to become a woman, and you're 45, you're 55, you're 85, the kingdom of heaven can be in you. Matthew chapter 5, verse 3. Blessed are ye who are poor in spirit, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to you. Blessed are you when you mourn, for it's time for you to be comforted. Right? Blessed are you, right? Blessed are you when you humble yourself, for you shall inherit the earth. There's an inheritance for you. I'm here to tell you, like, this is what Yahshua said. I'm just repeating what he said. See, this is something you need to hear. Blessed are you blessed are those who are merciful, for you shall obtain mercy. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, right lawful standing, for you shall be filled with what you've been looking for. Right? Blessed are you when they revile you and say all manner of evil against you and come against you and this and that, because you're keeping the law for his name's sake. Blessed are you. Why? You should rejoice and be exceeding glad when they do that. Why? Because they did the same thing to the prophets that came before you. Come on, somebody. This is for you. Whether you a little baby or whether you a baby of the kingdom, whether you're a child of the kingdom, we're trying to give you the code for children. This is a code that nobody's been telling you. Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 16. Little baby boy, little baby girl, if you hear me out here, or grown baby boy, grown baby girl, if you hear me today. Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 16, it says that you are the salt of the earth. That means you got the flavor, you got the savor. But if you don't keep the flavor around, or if you don't use it before it expires, then you're not of any value except to be trampled over. And if you feel like people are bullying you or trampling you or doing these things, it's because that you done lost your savor. Or you never had it, or somebody took it before you had a chance to enjoy it. But see, the salt that you are, that means you preserve. You hear what I'm saying? You preserve life. You preserve law. You preserve happiness. Thank you for the love. You preserve things. Before there was a refrigerator, a fake way of keeping something preserved, right? Which means that we're keeping it longer than what we should anyways. You were supposed to have stuff that was preserved naturally. And it also gives seasoning. You know, we like seasoning, right? It also gives seasoning. I'm not saying you can't use a refrigerator. Before somebody asks the question, I don't know if somebody's going to ask or not. I got to be careful with what I say, right? But I'm just trying to say, but you got to have seasoning. You are the seasoning. You're the reason why people, when you do, why is it that when you show up, look, for the little ones that are listening, why is it that before you show up to the playground, don't nobody want to do that, but then they see you doing it by yourself, now everybody want to do it. Even if they wait for you to go somewhere else, they want to see you do it. And then they start doing it. It's because you seasoned it. When you touched it, it had to be better. Why is it that when you go to the job, nobody was doing that like that, and everybody acts like you ain't doing it, but then all of a sudden you go to another department, you look back, everything you were doing it, they started doing it the way you did. They just wouldn't give you credit for it. They just wouldn't say you were the mastermind behind it. They don't want to say they downloaded it from you. It's because you're a child of the Most High. Do you think that the Most High gives birth to anything except royalty? May I ask you a question? Do you believe that the Most High, the King of all, gives birth to anything that's not royal? Do you think that he's placed anything in your belly, in your womb, that's going to give birth to anything that's not royal? Why do you doubt yourself, child? See the code for children, right? Do you not know that a child shall lead them? Do you not know that a child shall lead them? What are you trying to birth right now that you keep thinking you can't birth or it's not going to be of any value? See the code for children, we got to talk to them like that. Right? Like somebody might be in a child's place. A child might have a place that they need to be in. A child might be in a place that they need to be in, but I'm sorry, I'm sitting here looking at something. I might have to get up. Okay. Sorry about that. But yeah, like a child might be in a child's place or whatever, but a child's place is not to be silent. Did you know that? That's what y'all really be saying when you say to your children, stay in a child's place. You mean shut up. But didn't you not like it when you went to church and they told you to just shut up when you was asking questions? They the salt of the earth. They're trying to figure out how not to be seasoned or how to season things correctly. They're the light of the world. If the light questions you, then give them question to help the light be shown on the right thing. There's supposed to be a city set on a hill. Why would you not tell them how to get up to the top of the hill? Why is it that these spiritual babies, why is it that these babies, even physically, why do they feel like they can't ask questions? Why are they busy being told stay in a child's place? Why are they busy? Look, I'm not trying to say that I'm all that or whatever, but it shouldn't be I take it on because if that's what I'm part of what my obviously I'm called to do. But real talk, it should have never got to a place, Israel, to where somebody like myself, being young, I'm only 40, started doing this about 28, became a rabbi at 30, right? I'm only 40, but it shouldn't be no reason why some 40-year-old is trying to tell our people how to make sure that we married. It should be something that we already have. I shouldn't be somebody be telling babies that never hear it that, hey, I love you. Right? I got to talk to grown men who don't hear from their own, as much as we talk about spouses and men never say it to their women and men never say it to their babies. I have to talk to grown men and tell them, hey, bro, I know that you're calling me and you're telling me that your wife doesn't say this to you, but I want to let you know that you're doing well. Keep on pressing, keep on going, right? I got to talk to the child in him. You don't realize that in every king there's a child, and every child there's a king, right? And every queen there's a child, and every child there's a queen. You don't realize. So I got to talk to the king in him, but I'm talking to the child in him and say, look, king, I know you do it. Press on. Keep on going. I know they're saying, hey, what you want credit for doing this? You're supposed to do it, but keep on going. That what you're doing is amazing. What you're doing is incredible. Keep on going. Keep on manifesting, because you got to talk, because nobody told him that as a child. And now he gets older and everybody still wants to deny the child in him. He's eternal. You know, the eternity means that if you need to heal somebody from something that was 8, then that means you got to deal with all of them in eternity. I got to deal with if he's 21 years old and he asked me for help for something that happened when he was 8, that means I got to deal with the 8-year-old, the 9-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 11-year-old, the 12-year-old, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-old, because they all exist at the same time. And they've all been hurt from what happened at 8. And so I can't help the 21-year-old until I make sure I take care of the 20 on down to 8. And then once I take care of all them, then the 21-year-old can make sure that he's living righteous for the 22, 23, 24-year-old. So we're correcting the 30-year-old already by taking care of the 21-year-old, by taking care of the 8-year-old. I got to talk to both of them. See the children code. Here's the problem. We can't deal with children correctly because we don't even see that we're still children. That's why you can be a wife of the Most High. You can be a son of the Most High, a daughter of the Most High, a child of the Most High, all simultaneously. All simultaneously. Because you are what? You are all of those eternally. Whenever you speak to something, you speak to your past, to your present, and to your future. I don't know why we only want preachers to speak to our present or speak to our future. Just tell me tomorrow is going to be all right. But doesn't the Bible say, don't worry about tomorrow? Why? Right? Seek ye first, Matthew 6, 33 and 34. Seek ye first the kingdom of Elohim and all his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto thee. And give no thought for the morrow. Why? Because the morrow shall already take care of the things for itself, even sufficient to the evil thereof. In other words, tomorrow is already being taken care of at the same time that today is. And if you're not able to even think about tomorrow and yesterday and today at the same time, because you're not that deep in your eternity yet, then stop focusing on tomorrow. Just realize that today takes care of tomorrow, because tomorrow technically was already taken care of before you even realize you need to take care of today. So when I'm dealing with somebody else in their today, I realize I'm dealing with their past, their present, and their future. Come on, somebody, right? And you got to tell this to your children, even the spiritual children. Yashla, I'm here to tell you once again, there are sisters that have been waiting to be able to hear. Brothers, there are sisters out there that have just been waiting to hear, baby, I appreciate you. Baby, I honor you. Baby, I would love to be able to spend time with just you. Hey, I crave you. Hey, look at how amazing you look. Look at how sexy you are, even when they ain't dressed up. Because guess what? The nails don't make you sexy to be. The hairstyle don't make you sexy to me. See, she might be waiting for you to say something about the hair, but she would stop worrying about. See, you like, why is she always like, look at my hair, look at my nails, look at my toe? Because you won't ever tell her she's sexy, period. I know you want to hear that. I know we ain't supposed to, pastors ain't supposed to talk about that stuff, but that's part of the problem. Ezekiel 34, you ain't got nobody talking about it. So you think Ezekiel 35, that Esau spirit is still here. Ezekiel 36, you have no environment. Ezekiel 37, therefore, even when the dry bones are lifted back up, where they gonna live at? Tomorrow we're gonna talk about the marital code, right? But we made sure we established what? The masculine code, the feminine code, and we talked about the code for children today. So when we talk about the marital code tomorrow, right, we see how important it is. Can you see those who've been with us in this series now? Some of you have been with us for all 9 parts, whatever this is so far. Can you see why it's important to have the code? Thank you for the love. Appreciate it. Can you see the importance of the code now? Can you see why, if you don't know how to decode certain actions, you're going to mess up generations? Can you see it now? Do you have do you have the knowledge, the intimacy with why you need to have cultural reference point for your vision, for where you're headed, for the blueprint? A builder without a blueprint, are they really a builder? Is a builder without a blueprint, are they really a builder? Or are they somebody that's winging it? I don't want somebody to build something and they ain't got no blueprint. Hear what I'm saying? I don't want somebody to build a family and you don't have no vision. I don't want somebody to be submitted to a mission, but there ain't no mission. Like, how do you get in submission? How do you ask a woman, a wife? It shouldn't just be a woman; it should be a wife. But how do you ask a wife submit to a mission, submit to me, right? But they're not supposed to be submitted to you. It's not submission; it's supposed to be submission. So she asks you questions like, "Baby, what you thinking?" And your answer is always nothing. It's not some woman shit. It's submission. We're supposed to submit ourselves one to another, but you a woman that doesn't support a mission. But you say, submit to me in this, give me that. What is he supposed to do with that? Oh, thank you for the love. Appreciate it. What is he supposed to do with that? What is he supposed to do with that? I won't submit to the mission, But once again, we don't know how marriage works, because you're supposed to be pre-qualified for marriage. You're supposed to be a husband in your work. And while you're in your work, you find a wife. And when you find a wife in your work, you find something that's going to be valuable specifically to what you've been called to do. Adam, in his work, before he had a woman, he had a work. Adam, do this, do that. Watch over the garden, right? Name the animals. Hey, I've named the animals. And in my work, I realized that there's no animal on my level. There's nothing that's created. There's no human being that's created that can be on the level like I am. Great, Adam. See, in your work, now you saw the need for this particular wife. You saw the need for this particular mission, this particular thing that will help you. So now let me put you to sleep. Go ahead and rest inside of that knowledge. Rest inside of that knowledge. Shabbat, tabernacle with me, come into covenant with me in that knowledge. Rest in that knowledge. And while you're resting, I'm going to pull out of your womb the only thing that will ever come out of your womb. I will pull out of your womb that which you will crave for. And when you wake up, I'll let you make the decision. Do you see her? Do you realize that she's on your level? Wow, you sure did. Yeah, because Yehovah didn't say it. Adam said it. He said what? He said, this is bone of my bone. This is flesh of my flesh. That's what he said. This is bone of my bone. And this is flesh of my flesh. Right? There's nothing that exists like her. She came from me. This is the only thing. So I'm not all in one. I'm not alone. It was not constitution. It was not valuable for me to be alone, all in one. You made for me a help me for this cause. Because of that, I will lead. He speaks over his own children. For this cause will every man, every one of us. He speaks over us. He says, for this cause will a man leave his mother and father, and he will cleave to his wife. For this cause, she will come first. She will become one. Why? Because she's the only thing that's come out of me. So now every man chases what came out of him. Children don't know that. Children don't think about that. Children hear the stories, but they don't hear the culture. It doesn't resonate. It's not something that they're like, I should give any time to it. Why should I give any time towards that? Who cares? Who cares about that? Why should I give any time towards that? I didn't even see mom and daddy do that. Sometimes daddy wasn't even there. Sometimes mama wasn't even there. Sometimes neither one of them was there. Right? Sometimes I'm a ward of the state. Sometimes grandmama and granddaddy taught me. Sometimes I didn't have nobody, so all I did, I went out and I listened to women tell me how to be with men, but all these women didn't have no men, let alone husbands. And I went to the barbershop and I listened to all these brothers tell me what it was to get a woman and have multiple women when they couldn't even keep one woman, let alone keep a wife. You went to the barbershop as a child, the code for children. You went to the barbershop as a child and you heard something wild, didn't you? Don't tell me you ain't hear no wild stuff at the barbershop. Come on. We're breaking the code breakers. Be honest. You gotta realize you gotta break this thing. Break out of this. Come out of her. Come on, you know you went to the barbershop and they said some wild stuff about these sisters. You know they did. Telling you all this stuff about how to keep a woman and how to keep this woman and that woman, and if you want a woman to lay down with you, and if you want a woman to do this, and all of these women ain't nothing but female dogs out here, really. And a woman is like a cat. You heard people like Eddie Murphy, and y'all learned more about marriage from him than you did a husband. Eddie Murphy, same person that got caught sleeping with trans women, but was telling you how to be straight. And he told you that women are like cats and men are like dogs. If you keep a cat in the house their whole life, they won't do anything. But when you let them go, they do all types of stuff, and you don't know what they're doing, but they come back. You thought that a woman was an animal. Matter of fact, you've heard people say, there's a song out. I know it's not a hip hop song, so I'm not sure how many of us are diaspora know the song. But there's a song that was out when I was junior high, high school, somewhere in there, maybe right out of high school, where they would say, I want to F you like an animal. I want to feel you from the inside. You know the word F, by the way. To F somebody is to basically say that you're messing with the king's wife. Why would you mess with another king's wife? Why would you want to F somebody? But y'all be saying that F me, daddy. Oh, I'm sorry. We ain't supposed to talk like that. My bad. Y'all never said anything. Y'all ain't never heard anything like that. Forgive me, y'all. I know y'all got virgin ears and everything. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to. I know y'all ain't ever heard nobody talk like that. Some of y'all still talk like that, but whatever. Like let's just keep it 100. Some of y'all still talk like that. I guess technically you could say it if it's your king. I guess you could say it to your king. I guess I don't know, but I'm just saying, right? You grew up with this stuff. Mother effer, mother effers. I know there's other uses they had too, but when they put hoods over your head and they wouldn't let you see who you were messing with, sometimes they would mess around in the breeding colonies that they had for, uh, POWs. They would put us in those breeding colonies and they would sometimes trick us into having relations with our own mothers. They would call you a mother effer. But you'll watch a show where somebody call you a mother effer 7,000 times and laugh, but then try to feel like, why do I feel a little weird when they keep saying this? That's why. There's a such thing as nervous laughter. Sometimes you're not laughing because they made the punchline. Sometimes you're laughing because it's nervous laughter. They called you something and something doesn't resonate right, so you're kind of nervous about it. So the punchline doesn't even matter as much. It's just the word they use. That's why a lot of people curse, is because they don't have the ability to come up with a proper punchline. I'm not saying people who curse in comedy can't come up with great punchline. I'm saying a lot of people who curse, especially if they curse a lot, or especially when they curse as part of the punchline, is because they realize that you'll laugh, and it's going back to wrestling. Bring this full circle. It's like they have a term in wrestling called cheap heat. If you're a heel, which means you're a bad guy, you have a good guy, the heel, and they call it a baby face. The baby face is supposed to be the one that everybody kind of like they would say, almost like little babies will get excited about, or they'll even be like, "Oh, people threw the babies in the air," or baby face supposed to be a way of saying somebody is baby face is a way of saying that like you're cute, like Babyface, the musician. Remember Babyface? Even though while he was writing all these songs and playing all these songs and stuff, he was also, you know, uh, he was also like, beating his wife. you know. So, but people believe that baby faces are supposed to just be great people, right? But in wrestling, they have heels, and they have this thing called cheap heat. So the baby face is supposed to be the good guy, the heel is supposed to be the bad guy, and you're supposed to get heat. Heat is when, once again, remember, it's sexual. So heat is when the tension's going there. You want the crowd to go ahead and be, um, you know, upset and frustrated, heat, sweat, stuff like that, getting intimate and all these terms that they use. And then after they finish getting this heat or whatever, then the baby face does something, and then there's less heat as you get ready to pop. And by the way, temperatures actually do that. So when somebody's having sex, you might get heated, but then if somebody has an orgasm, whatever, right, you get cool in the area, right? You actually go from being heated to being cool, like your temperature changes. So, going back to all this stuff. But long story short, you get cheap heat. So they want heat by making the audience mad. But cheap heat is when you'll do something wild. Like cheap heat is when basically they're trying to get a reaction out of you to make you angry. And sometimes it's cheap. In other words, it's like low hanging fruit, or it's something just to get you riled up. So what is cheap heat? Cheap heat basically means, like, let's say, like, those of you who might know, what are their name? I don't remember. Was it Harlem Heat? If you know about that wrestling group, Harlem Heat, Booker T, and Stevie Ray. And when they came into one territory, I forget what they called themselves, but they had this guy that basically was like a Ku Klux Klansman, and he led them in chains. And that was like a reason that you were supposed to boo them or boo him, which you would have thought, why would you boo the black people in chains? But they were in the South, right? So he would go ahead and he would bring him to the ring like that. I think they only did it once. It didn't work, but they were trying to get what's called cheap heat. Or Triple H versus Booker T, using Booker T again. Booker T is supposed to be the good guy in this scenario, and Triple H is supposed to be the heel, the bad guy. So Booker T is supposed to be the baby face, and so Booker's supposed to be the baby face, and you got Triple H is the heel. Triple H comes out and starts saying stuff to him like, people like you don't deserve to wear this. Then he's saying stuff that's like coded, but you don't get it. But then he outright just uses cheap heat to get it all the way there, to hope that people just boo him for something that's ridiculous. So he comes out and says, people like you with your with your nappy hair and your beady little eyes, right? And then of course they would still have Triple H win. So now the heel wins, and now everybody's like, "Wow, what happened? Like, why didn't Booker T win?" Right? Because they didn't really care about what you felt about racism. They were just trying to do that, yeah. Or like Popeye would be the baby face, Brutus would be the heel. Exactly. So they're teaching your children this, and they do a lot of cheap heat. This is the last thing I'm gonna say, and then we'll take our leave. And I'll see you guys this evening on Kofi_42, and we'll do our little roll call at the end, or our shout out at the end. But basically, Triple H. There's a lot of Triple H's, if you will. There's a lot of heels out there. There's a lot of people that get cheap heat. That's why they do the Republican Democrat. So don't teach your children to fall for that. Long story short, at the end of this, all this, make sure your children, you have the children's or the code for children. They're trying to train your children from little now to be Republican or Democrat, right? To be black versus white, to be independent versus dependent, right? Now, no interdependence. They're teaching them to be legal against law or no law at all against law. They're teaching them how to, and so when you do that, it's really easy to have cheap heat, right? When you do that, it's really easy to give these children cheap heat, because now all I got to do is just say Herschel Walker, and everybody's real quick. Oh, let me tell you about Herschel Walker and this and that. We got to make sure he doesn't get voted in. And can you believe that there's this black guy that's that lost? Right? It was cheap heat. It was easy. Meanwhile, you missed the fact that there was a pastor who was running at the same time, who was saying that I don't care about your babies being killed in the womb, and that God has shown him the way and shown him the light, and they're giving you antichrist spirit stuff, but you don't care because they just have you thinking Democrat. So you just thinking Herschel Walker is an evil black man, but not realizing that neither one of these skin folk is kinfolk, right? And even in the push of, well, we could go there with the interracial relationships, because there's some truth to that interracial relationships are something used to be able to get you to, not think that stuff still happens, or colorism doesn't still happen, etc. Like there's some of that still there. But you have a lot of these things. So I'm just saying, you got to be aware of that. You got to be real. You got to be honest. You got to acknowledge some of that stuff is going on. We got to be in a position to see that. So we thank you. We praise y'all for you. We appreciate you. We honor your presence today. Please check out my wife, as always, the Honorable Maya, on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. Not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She's a healer, herbalist, chemist, and biologist by degree. And we thank you guys for supporting her in her endeavor to make sure that the diaspora is healthy. The tincture, or the natural medicine of the month, is anxiety release. She has many, anyway, but anxiety release just happens to be, the tincture for this, or the main tincture for this month. But she has a lot of natural medicine. She goes out, forages, and because she forages all year, there's certain things that she has now that you can't even find. So if you'd like to be able to get something from her to help her out, let us know. Once again, that's Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, the letter N, Bloom, B-L-O-O-M, the letter N, and Flourish, F-L-O-U-R-I-S-H, all together. If you'd like to email her, you can email her at Bloom and Flourish, add the number 1 to that, bloomandflourish1@gmail.com. Or you can just contact us if for some reason you can't get through as well. So thank you all. We appreciate you. We honor you. Respect the king and queen, each and every one of you, even if you're not living inside the king or queendom yet. We appreciate the potential king and queen in each and every one of you. But Allah Acham Yachava, those who are on YouTube and Facebook, and even on the podcast, feel free to just go ahead and look in the description. And once you find the description, fill out the SOC questionnaire, or just if you want to contact us about stuff. Remember, classes are coming up soon, all that. If you're on TikTok, we're about to do our little run through at the end, where we play some music and we can have a little worship going on, and y'all can see certain things that we have coming up and ways to contact us and connect with us. So just hang in there for a second. We'll start that. But thank you all again. We honor you guys. As always, it's been Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken, until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, Yastel, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully, wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, family. Peace. Take care of yourselves. Thank you. And as the music starts playing, well, hopefully you guys will be able to hear the music, but as the music starts playing, we ask that you guys shout out where you're from. And we'll try to get back. And we'd love to be able to try and reach out to you at some point. And maybe somebody who's on, they'll be able to say, oh, we're in the same spot. And we'll be able to get in contact with you guys. So thank you again. We honor you. As the music plays, as you're on TikTok, feel free to let us know. Shout out where you're from. And thank you again for being on with us. We appreciate you. Take care. Shalom, everybody. Peace.